The story begins on a busy high school track where the runners were pushing through the final stretch of their race. While others struggled to catch their breath, Xu Jing crossed the finish line and stopped firmly. The coach checked the stopwatch and called out the result. Xu Jing 2 minutes 36 seconds 79. It was an impressive time, and the reaction from the sidelines was immediate. A group of girls watching began cheering and waving at him, calling out his name. Ignoring the noise, Xu Jing grabbed a water bottle to cool down. He tilted his head back and let the water wash over his face and neck. A timid female student stepped forward and held out a packet of tissues with shaky hands. She asked him to wipe his sweat. Xu Jing blinked, a bit confused, but accepted it politely and thanked her. She hurried back to her friends, overwhelmed with excitement. As Xu Jing wiped his sweat, he quietly gave a command. A faint yellow interface appeared in front of him, unseen by others. It displayed running experience plus 20, running LV3, 258 800. He noticed the points increased a bit more than usual. Then another notification popped up with plus 45. His expression went flat. He glanced at the crowd of girls still calling his name and muttered that this skill leveled up too fast. A sharp whistle cut through the air. His instincts reacted immediately. A tennis ball was flying toward him at high speed. Xu Jing didn't move in panic. He simply watched its path and caught it with a single motion. The impact sent dust around his hand, but he held the ball firmly. Smoke rose slightly from it, showing how strong the throw had been. He looked at it in confusion while the thrower stood in the distance with a sharp grin. Lu Xing's close friend ran up to him in a panic, asking who the thrower was. Lu squinted, recognized the person, and went pale. It was Pei Guang, the infamous school tyrant. He stood tall near the fence with a red aura around him, tossing another tennis ball, casually. Lu nearly fell over in fear. He asked Xu Jing why he had gotten involved with someone like Pei Guang and complained that it was probably because of girls again. He told Xu Jing to accept someone already so he would stop drawing trouble. Xu Jing gave no reaction and tossed the smoking ball aside before walking away. Lu stared at him, frustrated and scared, and chased after him, warning that Pei Guang wasn't someone to provoke. He asked what Xu Jing planned to do. Xu Jing didn't look back and simply said he was going to work out as he walked toward the gym. As he walked, his thoughts turned inward. People always told him that working out was useless and that martial arts were the only way to become truly strong. Xu Jing wondered if that was true. He looked at his hand and clenched it into a fist. For others it might be useless, but he was different. His confidence came from something he had kept secret for a month. He had not been born in this world. He had appeared without warning in a city that looked similar to Earth, but was fundamentally different. And he hadn't arrived empty-handed. A strange translucent panel followed him everywhere, operating on one rule: effort brings rewards. Back in his room, lifting a dumbbell wasn't just exercise. It was progress. With each repetition, golden numbers appeared: strength +1, agility +1, constitution +1. If he practiced a specific action enough, the system would upgrade it. Throwing darts wasn't just a hobby. After enough practice, his eyes would gain a precise blue focus, and the system would activate aiming LV1. Hard work is never wasted, he reminded himself. But the growth came with a cost. Standing in his room, his stomach growled loudly. The daily practice consumed a huge amount of energy, and he needed to eat constantly. Hungry, he went to the kitchen. When he opened the refrigerator, he found it completely empty. He sighed, staring at the bare shelves. He removed his shirt and tossed it aside. His body was well-defined and toned, but he reminded himself he wasn't working this hard for appearances. Later that night, Xu Jing walked through the neon-lit streets of his district, the 5th Metropolitan Circle. The city was structured like a target, with the outer areas poor and the inner areas prosperous. As he moved through the crowded streets, he felt the pressure of his situation. Half a year remained before graduation. He knew he had to decide whether he would fight to enter the inner circle or remain poor. With his resolve firm, he entered a convenience store. He needed fuel for his system, so he filled a basket with nutritious food, vegetables, milk, and proteins before heading to the counter. The cashier scanned everything and calmly announced the total, 210. Xu Jing froze. a bead of sweat rolling down his face as his confident thoughts stopped instantly. Moments later, the future ruler of the inner circle was quietly removing items from the basket, returning a carton of milk and then a vegetable, avoiding the cashier's eyes. Defeated by grocery prices, Xu Jing walked home through the narrow alleys of the outer circle with a small shopping bag in hand. He muttered to himself about the cost of 5 eggs, convinced the world had gone mad. Suddenly, a dark blur shot past him with the force of strong wind. He flinched and tightened his grip on his groceries before turning to find a small black cat on the pavement. It wore strange golden bands on its ankles and tail. The cat stared at him with wide eyes and meowed. Xu Jing relaxed, assuming it was just a stray, but the cat suddenly stiffened and fell over dramatically, lying motionless. He looked at it, unimpressed, suspecting it was trying to trick him for food. He crouched down to check, but as he looked closely, his expression changed. The cat's fur was dirty and matted, and it was covered in injuries, as if it had lost a fight. While he observed it, a faint voice drifted through his mind, sounding tired and defeated. The cat's eyes glowed blue as the voice continued. Xu Jing jumped back in shock, staring at the cat in disbelief. Even with a system of his own, hearing a cat speak was far beyond anything he expected. His gaze shifted to the golden band around the cat's tail, noticing its strange and detailed design. He touched it lightly, inspecting the metal. The moment he made contact, the band burst into golden light. His system reacted in a new way, sending an urgent message. Detected divine substance, absorbing divinity. The word stayed in his mind as the glowing light pulled his thoughts away from the alley, reminding him of the world he lived in. This planet, called Earthstar or Zhu Yao, was not the Earth he remembered. Its history was shaped by one event. 287 years ago, God died. It was not a myth. A colossal glowing being had appeared above the city, towering over skyscrapers, and then shattered, raining light across the world. Every human saw it happen. The sky still carried the remains of the broken celestial body, a reminder of that day. With the gods gone, people accepted that humanity stood alone. There were no answers to prayers and no miracles. Only strength mattered. The memory faded, and Xu Jing returned to the present, walking down the empty street with the black cat tucked in his arms. He felt the presence of his system and the potential of endless growth. While the world lost its gods long ago, he saw an opening where others saw emptiness. Blue energy flickered softly around him as he told himself he would eventually grind his way to godhood. Back in his small apartment, those ambitions were briefly paused for a simpler task, feeding the guest. Xu Jing placed a bowl of dry kibble on the floor. The cat looked at it, then turned away with clear disapproval. Xu Jing's eyebrow twitched as he reminded the creature it was supposed to be a stray, but the same tired voice echoed in his mind, and he realized something. This might not be an ordinary cat. If it had intelligence and standards, then dry kibble wouldn't work. Xu Jing stood up and headed to the kitchen while the cat watched him. Inside, he cooked with efficiency and determination. His knife moved quickly as he chopped scallions. Flames rose as he tossed ingredients into the wok, and every movement was practiced. For him, cooking was just another chance to level up. Soon, the apartment filled with the aroma of a freshly cooked meal. Xu Jing held out the steaming bowl of green pepper and shredded pork rice. The change in the cat was immediate, its earlier arrogance disappearing at the smell. Its eyes brightened slightly as it let out a small sound and began eating quickly. Xu Jing watched from the side with a quiet sense of satisfaction. He realized his guess was correct. Watching the creature eat normal food, he confirmed his thought that it wasn't a real cat at all, but a human who had turned into one. His gaze shifted to the golden band around its tail, thinking that it was probably the cause. Suddenly, a process inside him finished, and he felt a clear change settle in his body. He blinked, surprised by how quickly it completed. The progress continued, and a new ability was ready for him to use. It required a large amount of divinity, but he had just enough. He didn't hesitate and activated it. A golden light filled the room as the ability took effect. The energy gathered into a small flame hovering above his palm before sinking into his skin. He felt a strange new force settle within him. The ability gave him a passive effect, an extra life. If he died, he could revive within 7 days. The cooldown was 3 months. Shed Jing was stunned by how useful it was. He checked if there was an active skill as well, but it remained locked. It needed much more divinity to unlock, and he didn't have enough. His eyes drifted toward the black cat, still eating without a care. He considered draining more divinity from it, but when he noticed the cuts and injuries on its body, he stopped. It already looked weak. He admitted that taking more would be too much. His expression softened. Instead of pulling on its tail, he gently patted the cat's head and decided to think of another approach. The cat finished its meal and let out a small burp. Shed Jing still couldn't ignore the golden band on its tail. It was clearly connected to divinity, and he needed to understand it. He stood up and grabbed his jacket. He planned to go out and look for clues about divinity and also see what the creature did while he was gone. He stepped outside, closing the door behind him. The cat stared at the door for a long moment. Its relaxed expression slowly disappeared, replaced by a sharp, alert look. Its emerald eyes glowed faintly as it watched the empty space, clearly more intelligent than it appeared. Outside, the night was cold. Shu Jing walked through the outer ring's crowded streets. The district was filled with poverty, and entering the inner ring required impossible fees, even if someone qualified. Still, many people tried, hoping for a better life. Shu Jing wasn't concerned about that. He knew another way existed. If someone became a martial artist, all barriers vanished. A large character on a graffiti-covered wall spelled out, "Martial," like a reminder to everyone passing by. Shu Jing continued walking until a rough voice called out to him. A bald man holding a baseball bat stepped forward with a blond man carrying a metal pipe. They blocked his path confidently, claiming that he had offended someone named Pu Guang. Shu Jing looked indifferent. Before they could continue, he moved. His kick sent the blond thug flying backward. The bald man froze, unable to understand what happened. Before he could react, Shu Jing struck him as well, dropping him to the ground. Shu Jing picked up a few loose stones. His left eye glowed faintly as he used a targeting skill, sending the stones accurately into the thugs on the ground. A deeper voice came from behind them. A large blue dragon-shaped aura formed in the alley. Pei Guang stepped forward with clear hostility. He attacked, but Shu Jing dodged easily. Instead of feeling threatened, he became curious. This was the martial arts he had been searching for. Realizing that Pei Guang actually knew martial arts, Shu Jing stepped forward with calm determination. He no longer saw the man as a danger, but as someone who could give him information. He ordered Pei Guang to explain everything he knew. A heavy pressure filled the air as Shu Jing's presence grew stronger. The confrontation ended quickly. Pei Guang was slammed into the wall with enough force to crack it, leaving the alley filled with dust. The school tyrant slid to the ground, completely defeated. He leaned against the scattered debris, holding his bruised chest, his face drained of color. His earlier confidence was gone, replaced with panic as he pleaded desperately. Shu Jing stood in front of him, hands in his pockets, looking down with calm indifference. He found the fight unimpressive. He had expected more, but the opponent only had one predictable move. The brief exchange had been simple. Piang's attack looked strong, but followed an obvious pattern. Shu Jing dodged easily and countered with one accurate strike. As the dust settled, a golden notification appeared at the side of his vision, confirming that the conditions had been met and the fighting skill had activated. Shu Jing felt a shift in his fists. The ability was linking his earlier aiming improvement to the precision of his punches. Looking at the trembling man on the ground, he understood how large the gap between them truly was. Dealing with someone of Pei Guang's level was more than enough for him now. Pei Guang pressed himself against the wall, shaking as he begged Shu Jing not to hit him again. Shu Jing ignored the apology and leaned forward, asking about the punch Pei Guang had used earlier. Confused but too frightened to lie, Pei Guang explained that it wasn't a technique, but inner force, energy collected throughout the body and released through a movement. Shu Jing asked how to train inner force and who taught him. Pei Guang admitted he only knew the basics and couldn't explain it clearly. Shu Jing watched him for a moment, then grabbed him by the collar, unimpressed by his attempt to appear helpless. He listed the rumors Pei Guang had spread about himself to build a tough reputation, pointing out how different reality was. P.O. Guang burst into tears, insisting it was all a persona and none of the stories were true. Xu Jing didn't accept the act and delivered one more strike to make sure the lesson stayed. He warned P.O. Guang that if he ever forgot this moment, he would be punished every time they crossed paths. As he turned to leave, he ordered P.O. Guang to write a self-criticism and recite it 10 times in front of the class the next morning. He also told him to have his friend record a video so Xu Jing could review it later. Terrified, P.O. Guang agreed repeatedly and quickly showed Xu Jing a location on his phone, a dojo. Xu Jing glanced at the screen, noting the dojo location, then walked away, leaving the shaken school tyrant behind. Entering the inner ring marked a clear change. The old brick buildings faded into tall glass structures that reflected the city lights. Following the navigation on his phone, Xu Jing walked quietly through the clean, bright streets. Golden notifications appeared again, calculating experience gained from the earlier fight. He compared it to regular workouts and realized that one short battle had given him more progress than hours of training. He also awakened a new skill, which led him to a simple conclusion. Picking fights would increase his strength faster. Eventually, he arrived at a large building with a golden sign, Golden Wind Dojo. After the phone indicated the destination was reached, he entered. The lobby was quiet, and as he greeted the receptionist, she quickly hushed him, explaining that the master was teaching a class. Inside, an elderly man with a long white beard instructed a group of students about breathing methods and the basics of circulating inner force. Xu Jing stood at the back, listening with interest. This was exactly what he needed. He asked the receptionist if he could join, and she agreed, slightly flustered. A small notification appeared above her head, indicating charm experience. Xu Jing took a seat on an empty mat. The master instructed the students to tighten their core, inhale deeply, and hold their breath. Xu Jing followed the guidance calmly. The assistant watched nervously, worried because the group rarely produced promising students. Soon enough, most students reached their limits. Faces turned purple, many coughed violently, and even their most hopeful student failed. The master looked disappointed. The assistant apologized, asking for more time to find a suitable student. She then quickly stopped him from speaking further and pointed at the back. Xu Jing was still holding on without difficulty. A faint blue aura circled him as he practiced. The breathing method was harder than it sounded, requiring lung capacity most people didn't have. Inside Xu Jing's body, the sensation was intense but manageable. His expression remained composed. When the assistant announced the time was up, Xu Jing released his breath steadily. A notification confirmed his success. Inner force activated. The master immediately approached him, asking if he felt any discomfort. Xu Jing looked at his own palms, noticing faint steam and a light feeling throughout his body. He replied that he felt refreshed. The master's expression brightened. He held Xu Jing's hand and asked for his name, inviting him to join the dojo. Before Xu Jing could respond, the front entrance suddenly burst open with a loud crash. A dark silhouette stood in the doorway, radiating a menacing red aura. Without a word, the intruder swung a weapon and released a massive wave of crimson energy that tore through the room, instantly turning the peaceful training session into a battlefield. When the smoke cleared, the intruder was revealed to be a massive insectoid creature with glowing red eyes, pinning a disciple to the ground. Its mandibles clamped down with a sickening crunch, tearing into the student's chest as blood splattered across the dojo floor. Xu Jing stared at the scene, his pupils trembling as he shouted, "What the hell is this?" Chaos spread everywhere. The master, who was usually calm, shouted for everyone to leave quickly and not crowd together. He turned to his assistant and ordered Manager Jean to maintain order. She cried out in response, trying to guide the terrified students to the exit. But the monster fixed its multiple red eyes on the fleeing crowd and unleashed another wave of crimson energy with a high-pitched screech. The attack flew directly toward Manager Jean, who froze in fear, unable to dodge. Xu Jing moved instantly, diving forward and pulling her out of the attack's path. They crashed to the floor as the energy carved a gash into the wall behind them. Shu Jing hovered over her, breathing hard but focused. Manager Jean looked up, her face flushing red as she whispered, "Student, thank you," while her thoughts spiraled out of control. A golden notification appeared beside her head. Sham Prusva. Shu Jing ignored it entirely, his attention locked onto the raging monster. His mind flicked back to He Yong's explanation in the alley. Inner force is gathering energy from all parts of the body and then expelling it externally through a move. Shu Jing analyzed the red aura surrounding the beast. Inner force versus inner force. Now is the perfect opportunity to experiment. The creature lunged at him with a screech, but he met it head-on. His fist, glowing with golden light, slammed into the monster's steel-hard exoskeleton. The impact felt like hitting a wall. He wondered if the thing was like a cockroach, able to withstand hundreds of times its own weight. He realized blunt force might not work. If that is really the case, he focused his strength into a single point. Golden energy inside his arm gathered into a concentrated needle. The shell shattered under the strike. Crack! Green blood sprayed as the creature was blasted backward. Skill activated. Inch force 80-20. Dust settled around him as he casually dusted off his jacket, unimpressed. "It's much weaker than it looks," he muttered. Manager Jean watched with starry eyes, completely forgetting the danger. "So cool," she sighed. The old master watched with fear and awe, realizing the boy had just mastered chi force and released a dangerous amount of it, something a normal body shouldn't handle. The creature rose again, its broken shell creaking as red energy flared around it. Shu Jing asked if it still wanted to continue. He took a stance, calm and cold, raising his fist as golden lines spread across his skin. "The result will be the same no matter how many times you try." Chi meridians gathered, ready to end it. But before he could strike, a fountain of blood burst into the air. Shu Jing froze, confused. A streak of crimson light tore through the room, followed by a brilliant slash of blue energy. It cleanly sliced the monster apart before it could react. Shu Jing blinked at the severed chunks, briefly thinking he might have overdone it, before realizing that the blue energy wasn't his. A silver-haired woman stood amidst the debris, wearing a sleek tactical bodysuit. "Void Blade taking over this area," she announced. "Unrelated personnel, please evacuate immediately." Shu Jing analyzed her, recognizing the White Raven Squad. To defeat the creature in one strike was impressive. She looked at him, trying to stay professional, though she was surprised by the damage he had caused with his bare hands. A faint blush crossed her face. She immediately decided she needed to recruit him. She stepped forward and handed him a note. "Sunday afternoon at 5 o'clock. Come to the address on the note. I will tell you what you want to know." Shu Jing unfolded it. Ching Ching Library 7F. A library, he thought. Outside, Manager Zhang rushed around him in excitement, worried and infatuated. She tried to check him for injuries and nearly said she would take him home before correcting herself to a hospital. He stepped back politely, saying he was fine and thanked the dojo staff. She called out for him to return tomorrow while hearts practically floated around her. The old master watched him leave, sighing that such talent couldn't be contained in a small dojo. Walking through the illuminated streets, Shu Jing checked his system notifications. Intense Battle EXP had given him Fitness EXP 29, Health Preservation EXP, Charm plus 50, and Fighting EXP 98. Conditions met. Activated. Inch Force. He studied the new technique, realizing it was simply concentrated chi accelerated in a short distance. He tried gathering chi again, but strain hit instantly, so he released it quickly, remembering the danger of internal injury. He decided to rest and try again tomorrow. The night's events weighed on him. White Raven Squad, Cockroach Man, this world hid many secrets. He touched the note in his pocket, planning to check the address on the weekend. When he reached his apartment, he checked the security feed. The camera showed his black cat sitting upright in his chair, typing on his keyboard. He kicked the door open and confronted the cat. "What were you just messing with on my computer?" The cat only blinked innocently. Meow. A silent standoff followed, until Shu Jing sighed from exhaustion and collapsed onto the bed without changing. The cat crept closer, curious, then caught the metallic smell of blood. Its expression hardened instantly. Energy crackled around it as it wondered who had hurt its person. In a spiritual vision, the cat appeared before Shu Jing, larger and imposing, declaring itself Ningfuna, leader of the dragon sect, demanding he explain what happened so it could seek justice. Shu Jing, half asleep, only muttered that he knew the cat could speak and said they would talk after he slept. Ningfa panicked, shaking him and shouting for him to stay awake long enough to explain. The morning sun shone into the apartment, lighting up the table where fried shrimp, fresh salad, and rice were set out. Shu Jing sat at the table looking completely refreshed. Full health resurrection had cleared away all the fatigue from the previous night. Across from him, the black cat was eating quickly, her cheeks full as she spoke between bites, sauce still on her face. So, you weren't beaten up by someone, but instead, you defeated a monster? Shu Jing ate calmly. Yeah. The cat swallowed, and her expression turned serious for a moment. I haven't heard of those things running into the city area, she said, bothered by the thought. Shu Jing watched her, his expression softening. Despite her attitude and unusual origins, she had been genuinely worried about him the night before. He reached out and gently placed his hand on her head. Thank you for worrying about me so much. Nar, he said with a warm smile. The cat froze, her face turning red as she stammered, caught off guard. Nar. She pushed his hand away, trying to regain her composure. You're not allowed to call me Nar. You must address me respectfully as Lord Sect Leader. Shu Jing pulled his hand back, his smile turning playful. Okay, Lord Nar. Before she could react again, he leaned back and held up his phone. The relaxed mood immediately shifted into something more serious. Since Lord Nar can speak, he said with sharp eyes, why don't you explain what the you inside the phone was doing? The cat stiffened, her expression going blank before anxiety took over. She froze, realizing she had walked straight into trouble. This thing is called a cattail ring, he read aloud, comparing the object in his hand with the information on the screen. It is a type of god relic. He looked down at the cat, who lay stiff on the floor. I was looking up information on it, he said, intrigued. So this thing really is a god relic. Shu Jing recalled history books. 287 years ago, the god had died in the sky, and the golden specks that fell were fragments of divine power, god relics. I had only heard about them before, he thought, staring at the metal band. But now I've finally seen one. No wonder it can absorb divinity. He became absorbed in examining it, and forgot he was still holding the cat. He rubbed the metal while looking closely at her tail. The cat finally burst out. How long are you going to keep pinching? Shu Jing flinched and released her tail. Cough. He cleared his throat and returned to the topic. So, you were looking up instructions on how to use it? Ningfa lay flat on the floor, exhausted, her ears drooping. Not all, she muttered. I want to take it off. Regaining her composure, Ningfa sat up straight and her expression darkened as she explained what had happened. You know it too. The Dragon Siang, she began. Not only do they control entertainment venues, but they also work with martial arts halls for some drug businesses. Her memory went back to the night her life changed. I was attacked in my own villa. Someone put this thing on me, and I turned into a cat. By the time she escaped, her organization had already been taken over. I can only turn back into a human appearance if I take it off. Her claws scratched the floor lightly as she continued. And then, kill all those people, she said with clear intent. Shu Jing watched her calmly. What do you plan to do next? He asked. If you can't find it on the internet, the library probably won't help either. Ningfa's expression shifted from anger to thoughtfulness. She smirked. Regarding this point, this sect leader already has a plan, she said confidently. She pointed a paw at him. That is to have you practice martial arts and become strong. Shu Jing blinked, confused. Is there any connection between these two things? Of course, there is, Ningfa said, standing on her hind legs. After you become strong, various organizations will come looking for you, she explained. Maybe among them, there will be god relic holders. Then you can investigate and find a way to remove the cattail ring. She puffed her chest slightly. I'm going to introduce you to the best dojo. Shu Jing raised an eyebrow. You mean? Ningfa grinned. Have you heard of Hidden Dragon Dojo? Shu Jing's expression went flat. Of course. He turned to his computer, and quickly brought up a page. Back when I wanted to practice martial arts, I checked the tuition fees of all the dojos in Ching, he said, and Hidden Dragon Dojo was the most expensive. He scrolled down to a long list of one-star reviews, but I didn't remember it because it was expensive. He read some out loud. What kind of dojo is this? The teaching quality doesn't match the tuition. Refund the money. Every day, they just send a few women to supervise. I suspect this is a scam dojo. Studied for a week. My back aches every day. No one gives any method to relieve it. Ningfa scoffed. These people can't even endure hardship. Why bother learning martial arts? She looked up at him seriously. In the circle of true martial artists, no one looks down on Hidden Dragon Dojo. Xu Jing sighed. So how do I get in? By following the rules of the Manhwa, she declared. Dojo storming, of course. Xu, if I smash up the dojo's venue, will they still accept me? He asked. Ningfa stared at him. Look at your unsophisticated appearance, she said. Dojo storming is just an interview. She explained the hierarchy. Dojo disciples are also divided into ranks. A pyramid formed in Xu Jing's mind. Bottom tier, those who pay. Middle tier, those with talent. Top tier, those who prove their strength. Those with talent still have to rely on actual ability, she continued. It's useless if it takes 10 or 8 years to become capable. Xu Jing understood. He didn't have money or years to spare, only his system and his fists. I just have to go there and prove I'm better than everyone else. Ningfa, now acting like an advisor, added one last point. Dojo storming is a form of self-recommendation, she said, and the best way to prove one's spirit. As Xu Jing headed for the door, the cat jumped onto the window. So, remember to go to the dojo tomorrow, she said while looking outside. I'm going to take care of some things. The next morning, sunlight lit the city as Xu Jing reached the Hidden Dragon Dojo. The building was a traditional wooden structure tucked among modern skyscrapers. A disciple at the entrance walked over and greeted him with a smile. Xu Jing reached out to shake his hand. As their palms met, Xu Jing felt a sudden, sharp pressure. The disciple squeezed hard, veins standing out on his arm, while keeping a polite smile. Xu Jing guessed it was a test and decided to take it seriously. He gathered golden energy in his hand and squeezed back. The disciple cried out and pulled his hand away in pain. Xu Jing laughed and played it off, saying the man liked to spar. The other disciples snickered and the greeter complained about Xu Jing's strength. Xu Jing realized his mistake and let the man go. The commotion drew attention. Someone warned that the master and the direct disciples were approaching. A group moved in, radiating a stronger presence than the gatekeepers. Leading them were direct disciples who looked like experienced fighters. Li, a large muscular man. Zhu Shanning, a fierce woman in a qipao. Mingqing Xiao, a sharp-eyed girl with glasses. Chun Fuguang, a confident green-haired youth. And in the center, the master Mang Basong in a wheelchair with a black cat wearing a heavy pearl necklace on his lap. The lower-ranking students whispered, surprised at the gathering. The master rolled forward and asked if Xu Jing had come for dojo storming. The cat on his lap looked up and fixed its eyes on Xu Jing. The master noted it had been a long time since someone dared to try dojo storming his place. He then asked Xu Jing if he thought he was qualified. Xu Jing glanced at his system and worried quietly. His combat-related levels were low compared to a dojo master. The master announced he would ask questions first. Xu Jing answered his name and age. The questions then turned personal, where he lived, what his parents did, whether he had siblings. Xu Jing stood sweating and confused as the questioning felt oddly like a marriage interview. The master laughed and said he had to ask extra questions for a future son-in-law. Zhu Shanning stepped forward, cracking her knuckles and insisting they fight to decide. She promised she would go easy on him. Xu Jing shook off the confusion, refocused, and raised his fists. As Zhu Shanning entered the center, the other disciples whispered that Xu Jing might be in trouble. Ning Funa, the black cat, watched from the sidelines, puzzled and annoyed at the idea of a marriage interview. Zhu Shanning attacked without hesitation, her movements sharp and controlled. Xu Jing's aiming skill broke her movement down into precise frames. He did not retreat. Instead, he moved in her guard and grabbed her wrist. Using her momentum against her, he twisted and threw her off balance. She spun away and stumbled dazed. The direct disciple's expressions shifted from amusement to interest. Li commented that Xu Jing's dynamic vision and grappling positioning were accurate, noting the brief exchange with a critical eye. Next to him, the green-haired Chun Fuguan grinned, amused by the scene. He said it reminded him of his own younger days and laughed, calling Xu Jing a good seedling. Master Mang boss Hang joined in with a warm laugh while stroking the black cat on his lap. The tension in the room faded. The cat, Ningfiana, looked proud but was actually relieved inside. Xu Jing stood straight, dusting his hands, and asked the old dojo master if his dojo storming was successful. Golden notifications appeared in his vision, marking the reward of the battle, including the experience gained and the rise in charm. Master Mang moved forward with a pleased expression and confirmed that Xu Jing was qualified to become a direct disciple. He then reminded him that it was time to change how he addressed everyone. Xu Jing responded respectfully, greeting the master and his senior brothers and sisters. Chun Fuguang laughed loudly and called him the seventh junior brother. From the floor, Zhu Shanning, still holding her sore arm, introduced herself as the sixth senior sister and insisted he shouldn't get proud over one victory. Xu Jing thanked her warmly, noting in his thoughts that she had been the youngest before his arrival. A female disciple with long brown hair approached politely, offering to guide him through the entry procedures. Xu Jing quietly questioned the fancy title she used for him, and Master Mang clarified that as a direct disciple, he should not be looked down upon. She added that as an inner ring resident, the title was appropriate. Xu Jing asked if it could be changed, saying young master felt awkward, but eventually accepted whatever they preferred. Later, in the dojo lounge, Xu Jing relaxed on a sofa with the black cat resting on his lap. He mentioned that dojo storming wasn't as hard as he was told, saying the fight ended in one move. The voice of his guidance corrected him, explaining that Zhu Shanning was actually far stronger and that martial arts required more than just numbers. Decisions, intelligence, state of mind, and luck all mattered. Xu Jing understood and acknowledged that his victory had been influenced by luck and that he still had much to learn. The topic shifted, and he explained where he went the previous night, mentioning a visit to Grandpa Li and casually revealing some family history. The disciple awkwardly accepted the explanation and handed him an identity card for future access to the dojo. He received more charm experience, accepted the card, and prepared to return the next day. The following morning, the dojo was unusually lively. Disciples whispered as Xu Jing trained intensely in the center of the hall. He had been grinding all night, drenched in sweat and pushing himself through exhaustion while golden notifications continued to appear, marking improvements in fitness, inner force, and other skills. He sensed himself close to breaking through and refused to stop. With one final surge, a golden light flowed around him, signaling his breakthrough to inner force level 3. Drained, he collapsed onto the floor. The sound of a wheelchair approached. Master Mang looked at him with approval, saying Xu Jing was the strongest disciple he had ever accepted and would soon be able to cultivate the hidden dragon technique. Even exhausted, Xu Jing was eager and immediately asked about the method. Master Mang told him to hold out his hand. As they touched, the old man's expression shifted. He examined Xu Jing's internal state, seeing golden energy and signs of immense potential. He asked what sports Xu Jing usually did. Xu Jing tried to downplay it, but the master shook his head, saying there was no problem, only that Xu Jing's body was unnaturally well balanced, almost as if crafted perfectly. He described him as a martial arts prodigy. Xu Jing knew the system was the reason, but stayed quiet. He then asked again if he could learn the technique immediately. The master stopped him, saying he had trained through the entire night and his body was covered in injuries, so there was no need to rush. In Master Mang's vision, he noticed the hidden damage beneath Xu Jing's skin, with red stress points spread across his muscles and meridians. He explained that cultivating the method now would be dangerous. Xu Jing's excitement faded and he asked what he should do. Master Mang told him to go to the lounge and said he would send the sleeping dragon ointment shortly. A few minutes later, Xu Jing was waiting in the lounge. He stood up when he heard a knock at the door. Instead of servant, Zhu Shanning stepped inside. She looked different from her usual appearance, wearing a loose white t-shirt and holding a small bottle. Her cheeks were slightly red as she told him she was there to treat his injuries. Xu Jing felt uneasy. He remembered how easily he had defeated her the day before, and he worried she might still be upset. She told him to take off his shirt, and he hesitated before doing so. She stared at his trained physique, her face turning redder, then pointed to the massage bed for him to lie down. He lay face down. Zhu Shanning told him not to move and began preparing the ointment. Her mood seemed cheerful, but Xu Jing felt nervous. She applied the cream to his back with firm pressure, making him wince slightly. She leaned more of her weight onto him, asking why he wasn't reacting. He told her it was fine as long as she was comfortable. Hearing this, she paused. She admitted that she had acted out of her own frustration from losing and had tried to tease him. She asked timidly if he was angry. He reassured her that he wasn't and told her to continue. She finished treating his upper body and jokingly told him to take off his pants. Xu Jing panicked and quickly refused, causing her to laugh. She told him she was joking and left the room smiling. Xu Jing let out a long breath, feeling like he had just avoided trouble. After resting, he left the dojo and walked down the street. He stretched and felt more relaxed, but still thought about how tense the treatment had been. As he walked, he received a notification that he had leveled up in fighting and inner force. He checked the time and decided to go to the library for his appointment. He remembered the silver-haired woman from the White Raven Squad and thought about their name, noting that it sounded dramatic even though they were simply a special police group. He wondered why they wanted to meet him at a library. He arrived at the building, entered the elevator, and went up to the 7th floor of the Qingqing Library. The doors opened to a massive room filled with books, but the space was dead silent. The library was empty, and Xu Jing walked down the long aisle of bookshelves, wary of a possible trick. From the shadows emerged a young woman with long blonde hair, tied in a ponytail, radiating brightness and cheer, a stark contrast to the silver-haired soldier he had encountered before. She gestured toward a table by the window, bathed in warm sunlight. Xu Jing noted the setting, understanding that the meeting was conducted in secrecy, away from the special police station. Her expression carried appraisal, and it was clear she had already evaluated him. He considered the reasoning behind her interest and remained guarded, questioning the basis for her attention. The woman picked up a red book from the table, signaling its importance. Xu Jing stiffened, realizing that his knowledge of god relics, information he had shared only with the cat, had drawn her notice. A chill ran through him as he assessed her background and intentions, noting that the recruitment process was far more complex than he had anticipated. She poured water into a cup and slid it across the table without explanation. Xu Jing drank it and found it ordinary, yet he remained suspicious. A second cup of liquid, clear and colorless, revealed sweetness when tasted, a revelation that unsettled him. It confirmed that her intentions were deliberate and layered with hidden knowledge. She then explained the true history of their world. 287 years ago, God had died. The scattered points of light from the deity's demise, later called God's blood, had fallen to the earth, embedding themselves in objects, living beings, and aspects of human fantasy. Objects containing this divine substance were known as god relics. She displayed a glass teapot glowing faintly with magical light, identifying it as a god relic, a sweet water kettle with a unique serial number. Xu Jing touched the kettle, and his system detected the divine substance, absorbing divinity points immediately. His heart raced as he realized he could gain divinity simply by touching god relics. Holding the kettle, he pretended to examine it while secretly continuing to absorb points. Observing the kettle, Xu Jing noted the water inside defied gravity and logic, effectively making it a perpetual motion device capable of overturning fundamental laws of the universe. He began connecting this to the inner ring of the city, where abundant electricity and resources existed, unlike the suffering outer ring. He hypothesized that god relics might explain the disparity. He restrained himself from overthinking, understanding that the very existence of a god relic symbolized unreasonableness and was beyond human replication. After reluctantly stopping his absorption of divinity, Shu Jing considered the motives behind the woman's revelation. She provided proof of her authority, including her company's official designation as a god relic containment and research entity, and acknowledged his recent feat in defeating a monstrous opponent with the body of a normal person. Shu Jing recognized that his courage and spiritual strength had impressed her. Determined, Shu Jing resolved to join the organization immediately, seeing it as an opportunity to access god relics and gain experience points. His determination was absolute, and he envisioned the possibilities of working in a god relic containment environment with unrestrained ambition. Excitement rose on the protagonist's face as his thoughts raced. A god relic containment company meant frequent contact with god relics. At present, god relics were the only known source of divinity. Even the passive skill twin life was already this powerful, and if the active skill was even more unreasonable, then no one in this world would be able to defeat him. In his mind, the future was clear, and wealth felt inevitable. While he was lost in his thoughts, Wu Yuqing observed him quietly and formed her own impression. To her, he looked like someone who had not yet seen much of the world. She took out a contract from behind her and handed it to him. The protagonist accepted it and began reading carefully. As he scanned the contents, he realized it was mostly identical to a standard labor contract, with the addition of a confidentiality agreement. His attention soon shifted to the second section. It detailed the dangers involved in god relic work, clearly stating that unforeseen risks were possible. In the event of disability or death during containment operations, the company would provide a compensation of $5 million to the family, covering medical costs, funeral expenses, and basic living support. It also specified that no further claims could be made and that incidents caused by personal negligence would not be covered. After reading this section, doubts surfaced in his thoughts. He began to wonder whether this job was far more dangerous than he had expected. Wu Yuqing then explained the grading system of god relics, which were divided into 4 levels based on danger. As a newcomer, he would only be assigned the lowest grade tasks. As long as procedures were followed, the risks would remain minimal. Only after showing sufficient growth would he be exposed to truly dangerous work. Confidence surfaced in his thoughts as he considered the higher grade relics. Wu Yuqing clarified that relics of the highest grade were beyond the scope of individuals or single organizations and would inevitably involve official government forces. Still, a lingering question troubled him. He could not understand why he had been chosen. Having contact with a god relic alone did not seem enough to qualify him. In his thoughts, he reasoned that she knew nothing about his panel or his martial arts training. Being invited solely based on Void Blade's recommendation felt suspicious. Wu Yuqing then revealed the true reason. According to her, god relics possessed a form of will. Rather than humans finding them, relics were drawn towards certain people. Among humanity existed rare individuals capable of attracting god relics naturally. She herself was one such person, and the protagonist shared the same constitution. To her, the offered salary alone was proof of sincerity. As he looked at the salary section of the contract, his thoughts shifted again. The pay was substantial, with a high monthly salary, a share of containment rewards, and additional stacked benefits. Realization dawned on him that this was why the company had acted so urgently. When he signed the contract, his thoughts were already settled. Salary was secondary. What truly mattered to him was access to god relics. He felt confident about the future and accepted the cooperation without hesitation. After concluding the agreement, he prepared to leave. As he exited the library, his thoughts returned to his priorities. Between training at the Hidden Dragon Dojo and collecting god relics, he knew these pursuits alone would consume his time. For the foreseeable future, school would likely have to wait. He sent a message to his friend, asking for help and requesting leave from the teacher on his behalf. His friend quickly agreed, and he replied with a brief message of thanks. While chatting, his thoughts drifted. A monthly salary of $200,000 was an amount he could not have earned even 10 years after graduating. Right now, improving his strength was the most urgent matter. Only by becoming stronger would there be any hope of going back. The scene shifted to the outer ring, where he walked while projecting his digital screen into the air. His attention focused on his active skill, wanting to understand its function first. The screen displayed information related to twin life, including the divinity required for upgrading, its passive effect of possessing 2 lives with a selectable resurrection time, and a cooldown period. The active ability was now unlockable, while another ability remained locked behind higher requirements. He proceeded to activate the active ability. New information appeared, explaining that for each level, one physical-related ability could be designated, producing a doubling effect when used. The available options included memory, physical defense, physical strength, reaction speed, movement speed, calculation ability, and concentration. As he reviewed the options, he analyzed them carefully. Choosing physical strength would double his power, but his main combat method relied on precision rather than brute force. Defense felt unnecessary due to his existing durability. In martial arts, speed often determined victory, so movement speed became the most logical choice. Before committing fully, he decided to create a control comparison. He fixed his gaze on a distant street lamp, roughly 100 meters away, and ran at full strength to measure his baseline performance. The timer showed just over 10 seconds, which he found acceptable. He then activated Twin Life and repeated the run. This time, his movement was drastically faster, finishing in roughly half the time. The result left him exhausted but satisfied, confirming that the speed increase was exactly double. As he recovered, his thoughts deepened. Improving sprint times was relatively simple at first, but beyond a certain point, even a minor improvement required immense effort, talent, and resources. In real combat, where even the smallest mistake could be fatal, this kind of acceleration defied logic and intuition. It was decisive and unavoidable. With a sense of achievement, he clenched his fists, recognizing Twin Life as a skill that ignored physical laws and limits entirely. He attempted to use the skill again while his body was still warm, only to find it unavailable due to a cooldown. Frustration followed, but he quickly realized that only around 20 seconds had passed since activation. This meant the skill would need to be used sparingly, with no clear indication of when it would fully recover. Exhaustion finally set in, and he decided to head home. As he walked toward his apartment, soreness spread through his body from an entire day of exertion. His plan was simple: bathe, sleep, and return to training the next day. He ended up falling asleep in the building hallway. When he woke, he checked his phone and saw that over 6 hours had passed, leaving him confused about how he had ended up there. He immediately checked the recovery status of Twin Life. The cooldown was nearly complete. From his calculations, each second of usage required 1,000 seconds of recovery, meaning full usage demanded roughly 6 hours to recharge. A message appeared reminding him of training. Panic set in, and he ran at full speed toward the dojo. Upon arriving, he pushed open the gate and was quickly noticed. He was led forward without delay, pulled directly into a sparring session meant to demonstrate proper gene force usage. The surrounding trainees whispered among themselves, assuming the outcome was obvious and hoping he would not get hurt. Hearing this, he recognized that the situation mirrored the previous encounter. Despite being framed as a demonstration, he knew she intended to reclaim her pride from last time and would not hold back. Instead of concern, he felt calm. This was the perfect chance to test his new ability. The sparring match between the protagonist and Zhu Shanning began. He did not rely on raw power. Instead, his movements were swift and precise. In a brief exchange, he caught her arm and redirected her momentum, forcing her down. Her body struck the ground, and the floor beneath her cracked apart, breaking into fragments from the force of the impact. As she lay on the ground, struggling to regain her senses, confusion filled her thoughts. She had used her full strength, yet the result was still defeat. She could not understand why. The protagonist looked at her and responded lightly, treating the outcome as if it were simply a friendly exchange. Soon after, multiple screens appeared in succession, recording the experience gained from the fight across various areas, including combat, fitness, health preservation, aiming, and sports. Among them, one of his skills advanced to the next level. While reviewing the information, he began to reflect. The result no longer counted as defeating a stronger opponent while being weaker. This led him to suspect that once Twin Life speed was activated, the panel no longer judged him as inferior to Zhu Shannying. Despite her superior combat experience and caution, she had still failed to react in time. This confirmed to him just how powerful Twin Life truly was. Clenching his fist, he felt satisfied. His future training focus became clear. He needed to learn how to fully utilize the advantage created by overwhelming speed. From a distance, Chen noticed him and called out, inviting him to train together. The protagonist agreed and followed along. After some time passed, Chen observed him closely and realized something was wrong. What he had previously assumed to be exaggeration turned out to be real. The protagonist was already close to cultivating Dragon Chi, something that should not have been possible in such a short time. Chen explained the concept behind it. In the martial arts world, there existed a legendary physical state known as the treasure body. It referred to refining the human body into something comparable to a treasure. This state was said to involve 5 types of perfection: muscles like dragons and elephants, tendons like iron tree roots, flawless glazed glass skin, molten gold blood, and indestructible jade bones. Each stage represented an extreme transformation of the body. However, this realm was generally considered a myth, as no one had ever truly achieved it. The protagonist listened calmly. In his thoughts, he did not see it as impossible. Just because others could not achieve it did not mean it was beyond his reach. Chun joked internally that perhaps even becoming a martial arts myth was not entirely impossible. He then showed something on his screen and guided the protagonist forward, preparing to introduce him to someone important. He indicated that this person was the most powerful eldest senior brother of the Hidden Dragon Dojo, Manhwa. Before the introduction could properly continue, someone suddenly entered the dojo by crashing through a window. Glass shattered as the figure landed inside. The protagonist and Chun both watched the scene with shock and unease. Chun immediately recognized the person and reacted with visible tension. He led the protagonist closer and indicated that the man who had just entered was the dojo's most formidable senior disciple, Manhwa. As the protagonist observed him, his thoughts became cautious. The man clearly had unusual traits. He appeared quiet, physically overwhelming, disliked trouble, possessed extreme strength, was overly protective, and behaved in an unorthodox manner. Chun further indicated that this senior brother had a habit of avoiding normal entrances and preferred entering through windows instead. The protagonist glanced toward the broken window and began calculating internally. Jumping from the highest floor would require terrifying physical strength, far beyond ordinary standards. After a brief exchange between Chun and Manhwa, Chun seemed to understand the situation. He then informed the protagonist that he needed to leave to handle some matters. Before leaving, Chun emphasized a key principle of the hibernating dragon technique. Its core lay in force delivery and shaping. The protagonist repeated the concept in his mind, slowly grasping its meaning. He realized that he had been overly focused on increasing the quantity of chi while neglecting how it was shaped and controlled. A new idea formed as he considered combining this concept with his aiming ability. 3 hours later, the protagonist sat in meditation, breathing steadily and focusing his mind. He gathered his power into his index finger and released it toward the wall. The impact created a large hole, far exceeding anything he had achieved before. As he examined the result, he acknowledged that this was far more effective than simple projectile techniques. At that moment, the dojo master arrived alongside Zhu Shannying, applauding his progress. The master appeared pleased, recognizing that in addition to his exceptional physical talent, the protagonist also possessed remarkable aptitude in sports-related cultivation. The master then handed him a pearl-like object. Without hesitation, the protagonist consumed it. Immediately afterward, the master's expression turned serious, demanding his full attention. The protagonist's consciousness began to fade. Confusion filled his thoughts as his surroundings blurred. He questioned where he was and what had just been done to him. As he lost consciousness, he perceived a massive dragon formed entirely of energy. The dragon surged forward and entered his body. A glowing, dragon scale-like pattern appeared on his arm. As he faintly registered the change, Confusion lingered in his thoughts as he stared at his transformed hand. The protagonist held his head tightly with both hands as discomfort surged through his body. Pain throbbed behind his temples while the chi inside him felt chaotic, rushing wildly in every direction. He suspected that this instability was the effect of the pill he had just consumed. As his consciousness stabilized, he focused inward. He slowed his breathing, deliberately calming the restless chi. Using the hibernating dragon technique, he entered a controlled state of breath retention. The sensation that followed felt profound and unfamiliar. All distracting thoughts faded away, leaving only clarity. In that moment, he realized that complete focus on cultivation alone was enough. His consciousness was soon pulled back into the dreamlike dimension. Once again, he found himself seated before the gigantic dragon formed from particles resembling god relics. As he faced it, his eyes transformed, taking on the same presence as the dragon's. Several translucent screens appeared before him, indicating that the conditions had been met and a new skill had been activated. The visualization ability appeared, newly unlocked, and still at its initial level. When he fully regained awareness, confusion surfaced. He did not understand how he had returned so suddenly. Observing him, the dojo master appeared calm and satisfied. The master had intervened just in time, preventing the protagonist's chi from being completely exhausted. Cultivating dragon chi on the first attempt was no small feat, and the master clearly regarded this achievement as extraordinary. The protagonist wondered what dragon chi truly was. The dojo master explained that dragon chi was fundamentally tied to emotion. Strong emotions enhanced strength and vitality, especially in moments of anger or survival. Within the hidden dragon style, stimulating emotions was referred to as chi of motion, while controlling emotions was known as chi of stillness. Mastery came from combining both states, allowing success in any pursuit. Motivated by this explanation, the protagonist considered how such power could be trained. The dojo master believed he had already grasped the core of it and encouraged him to reflect rather than ask further. The protagonist realized that the essence might lie in the distraction-free state he had entered earlier. As memories surfaced, he noticed something strange. Knowledge from his past life felt intact and vivid. Problems he once struggled with now seemed simple and effortless. Concepts he had not studied in years appeared clearly in his mind. This sudden clarity led him to realize that his intelligence had improved. The dojo master acknowledged this, but implied that it was only a minor aspect of the transformation. The protagonist also noticed that ordinary matters no longer stirred his emotions easily. His imagination had strengthened significantly. He could now visualize a giant dragon with extreme precision, down to individual strands of its mane and every golden scale. He suspected that this ability was closely related to visualization itself. The dojo master made it clear that understanding alone was insufficient and that only practice would reveal the truth. He then instructed Qingjiao to spar with the protagonist. Qingjiao was known for having the best motion control among all disciples, surpassing even her father, Boss Hang. As Qingjiao approached, the protagonist's thoughts wandered briefly, distracted by her appearance. He wondered how her strength compared to that of the sixth senior sister. Pushing those thoughts aside, he charged forward, mentally asking forgiveness from the fourth senior sister. Qingjiao remained calm. With a single raised hand and a simple gesture, she halted his attack and sent him flying effortlessly. Observing this, the dojo master laughed, noting that the protagonist's intentions had been far too obvious. As the protagonist sat on the ground preparing for another attempt, he questioned whether her strength surpassed even his golden finger. When Qingjiao formed another hand seal, he rose again, determination burning in his chest. He surged forward at full speed, resolved to win this time no matter the cost. The protagonist tried using various strengthening skills and techniques against her while continuing to attack. In his thoughts, he believed that in martial arts, methods did not matter. Only the one who remained standing was considered the winner, while the one on the ground was the loser. She countered with a clean kick that struck him directly, sending him flying backward and crashing to the ground at a distance. After a moment, He forced himself back up, gathering what strength he had left, and pushed himself to continue the sparring. From outside the dojo, the sounds of continuous combat could be heard as both of them fought without holding back. During one exchange, the protagonist landed a solid punch to Qingjiao's chest. The force behind it sent her flying through the air, carried by the energy contained within that strike. The protagonist felt a strange sensation travel through his hand at the moment of impact. It was unfamiliar and different from anything he had experienced before. The dojo master stepped in and ended the match, deciding that it was enough for the day. Qingjiao was sent away to rest, as continuing any further would no longer be effective. As she left, the protagonist wondered why the fourth senior sister never spoke. The dojo master explained that something had happened when Qingjiao was very young, and that her story could not be explained quickly. It was something that would need to be discussed another time. The protagonist accepted this explanation without pressing further. The dojo master then observed him closely and asked about the results of the day's training. Sweat streamed down the protagonist's face as he reflected on how he felt. His body was completely exhausted, more tired than he had ever been in his life. At the same time, he felt an unfamiliar sense of happiness and fulfillment. On his way home, the protagonist thought about the sparring session. The fourth senior sister was extremely fierce. After sparring with her for more than 4 hours, his experience had increased significantly. He realized that continuing to train alongside her would be extremely beneficial. When he reached his apartment, he opened the door and called out to his cat, bringing fried chicken with him. When there was no response, unease settled in. He searched around the apartment, growing increasingly worried as time passed. It was already late, and the cat was nowhere to be seen. As he approached the bathroom, he noticed that the light inside was turned on. Seeing this, a thought crossed his mind. Someone appeared to be inside the bathroom. Standing near the bathroom door, the protagonist noticed a single pair of shoes placed neatly beside it. He reasoned that Warner had not brought any guests home. With only one pair present, it meant she was likely inside. A sense of unease followed. His thoughts turned cautious as he recalled that Warner had mentioned having enemies before. The possibility that something had gone wrong crossed his mind. He hurried forward and pushed the bathroom door open. Inside, he saw Warner bathing calmly. The tension in his mind immediately eased, and he realized there had been no danger at all. He sat down beside the bathtub and gently held her paw, reminding himself that the fried chicken he brought back would get cold if they wasted time. At the mention of food, Warner's attention shifted, her thoughts clearly drawn toward hunger. The protagonist joined her by the bathtub and began helping her bathe, carefully scrubbing her head with soap. As this continued, Warner drifted into a light daydream, relaxed by the familiar care. At that moment, Warner turned toward him and placed a paw against his chest. The relic attached to her tail suddenly began to glow. The light grew intense, forcing the protagonist to close his eyes as tears formed from the brightness. When the light faded, something had clearly changed. Warner was no longer in her original form. She had transformed into a human figure that still retained certain feline traits. The protagonist froze in shock, struggling to process what he was seeing. Warner herself noticed the change at the same time. Seeing her own hands and unfamiliar body caused immediate confusion and embarrassment. She instinctively tried to cover herself and blocked the protagonist's view with her tail. The protagonist remained still and calm, reassuring himself that he had not seen anything inappropriate. His focus was on de-escalating the situation rather than reacting. As Warner became aware of her position, her embarrassment deepened. She shut her eyes tightly, overwhelmed by the sudden transformation and proximity. The protagonist noticed her reaction and questioned internally what was wrong. Warner, flustered and upset, denied that anything was happening, though her thoughts betrayed her confusion and frustration. She realized that the transformation had likely been triggered unintentionally. The emotions she had felt earlier, combined with the situation and the relic's response, had caused this outcome. The condition itself felt messy and unreasonable to her, especially with the remaining animal traits still present. She warned herself not to let misunderstandings form. This situation was clearly an accident, nothing more. As she attempted to move away, Another unexpected sensation made her react sharply, further escalating her embarrassment and anger. The protagonist, maintaining restraint despite his own discomfort, understood that the situation was beyond simple control. He realized that if she did not move away soon, things could worsen unintentionally. Warner finally decided to leave the bathtub. She instructed herself to move carefully and insisted that the protagonist keep his eyes closed. As she stepped out, her foot slipped on the soap. Losing balance, she fell directly onto the protagonist's lap. The sudden impact left both of them frozen. The protagonist stiffened, sweat forming as he struggled to remain composed. Warner, completely flustered, realized what had happened and panicked internally, insisting that it had not been intentional. The protagonist felt a wave of embarrassment, his face heating up as he struggled to remain still. The situation was becoming increasingly difficult to manage, especially with Warner still so close. Warner reacted with visible discomfort. Her movements became restless, and her expression showed clear unease. The more she shifted, the harder it became for him to keep control. Tears welled up in her eyes as she felt overwhelmed, unable to fully explain herself. It was obvious that none of this had been intentional. The protagonist focused on calming her down. He understood her panic and reminded himself to endure just a little longer. At the same time, he realized that if this continued, things could spiral beyond control. His expression turned serious. He knew that she needed to leave immediately, or the situation would become far more complicated. Wana noticed the shift in his demeanor. After a brief pause, she suddenly bolted out of the bathroom at full speed, instinctively covering herself as she fled. Left alone, the protagonist finally exhaled and resumed bathing by himself, trying to clear his thoughts. An hour later, he stepped out of the bathroom, drying his hair with a towel. He noticed that Warner had already returned to her original form. The transformation had reversed without warning, leaving only confusion behind. Warner appeared frustrated and irritated. After calming down earlier, she had inexplicably turned back into a cat and was now unable to transform again. The inconsistency of the relic's behavior clearly bothered her. When the protagonist tried to approach, she dodged away and put distance between them. Observing this, he understood her reaction. Given what had happened earlier, it was natural that she did not want any physical contact. He carefully explained that he had recently encountered someone knowledgeable about god relics. His plan was to seek help the next day and learn more about Warner's condition, hoping it might allow her to transform again safely. Warner reacted dismissively on the surface, but inside, excitement quietly stirred. The thought of transforming again filled her imagination with wild, self-indulgent fantasies of turning the tables on him. She began laughing to herself, lost in those thoughts, while the protagonist watched her with confusion, unable to understand her sudden mood shift. Later that night, the protagonist went to bed and fell into a deep sleep. By morning, he woke feeling refreshed and noticed Warner sleeping nearby, her breathing calm and steady. A notification sound from his phone pulled him fully awake. He checked the message and saw that it was from Yu Qing, the person who had previously recruited him. The message was short and urgent. Reading it, excitement stirred within him. At last, new work had arrived. The scene shifted to the next morning inside the Qingchang library. After entering the library, the protagonist immediately sensed something unusual. The entire space was silent and empty, with no signs of activity anywhere. As he looked around, confusion arose in his mind. He had been told to come quickly, yet the person who summoned him was nowhere to be seen. His gaze slowly swept across the room until it settled on a single girl seated at a table, quietly reading while wearing a pair of glasses. At first glance, she seemed like an ordinary student, but something about her presence felt familiar. A moment later, realization struck him. The girl with the glasses was Wu Yuqing. She revealed herself soon after, confirming his suspicion. As she removed her glasses, her presence suddenly became much more noticeable. A faint trace of embarrassment crossed her face before she quickly composed herself. She explained the glasses she had been wearing. They were a god relic capable of suppressing a person's presence, making them difficult to notice. While worn, they dulled one's existence, but once removed, all that suppressed presence would surge outward at once. The longer they were worn, the stronger the effect would be afterward. The protagonist reacted with mild confusion, finding the explanation unexpected but intriguing. As he stood there, he sensed the presence of divine energy reacting within him. Wu Yuqing continued explaining calmly, making it clear that the relic's effects were far more complex than they initially appeared. She then handed the glasses to him. As he examined them, curiosity filled his thoughts. Certain strange reactions he had experienced earlier now made more sense to him. He soon shifted his focus back to the reason he had been called. That was when Wu Yuqing brought out several documents and laid them before him. She explained that the mission was unusual. It was a containment task that normally would not be assigned to someone at his level. The target involved another god relic, one that amplified the wearer's primal desires. The current bearer was a woman named Lu Huiying, whose impulses became uncontrollable when encountering attractive men. The protagonist put on the glasses as he listened. It became clear that this relic had been prepared specifically for him. Given his current foundation, suppressing his presence first and then releasing it at the right moment would allow him to easily trigger the target's obsession and safely remove the relic. As the plan settled in his mind, the protagonist felt a slight flush of embarrassment. The method was obvious, but he could not deny that it suited him rather well. At the same time, he sensed another wave of divine energy being absorbed. The realization dawned on him that this mission would allow him to deal with two god relics at once while remaining relatively safe. He glanced at the glasses again, feeling that they fit him perfectly. An ambitious thought crossed his mind as he imagined the results of wearing them for an extended period before removing them. With renewed confidence, he adjusted his hair, his posture straightening slightly as his thoughts soared toward the future. Nearby, Wu Yuqing watched him quietly, a trace of confusion appearing in her expression as she tried to understand what was going through his mind. The protagonist broke the silence and casually brought up the topic of the glasses. From her response, he understood that the glasses were not her personal item, but something borrowed from another containment company. That information surprised him. Until now, he had assumed their organization was the only one of its kind in the country, especially given how secretive and high-level it appeared. She clarified the misunderstanding. God relic containment companies were indeed special, but in essence, their work was no different from cleaning dangerous threats that appeared unpredictably. Relics existed everywhere, and no single organization could possibly manage them all. Because of that, multiple companies operated under the same system. The explanation continued in a calm and realistic manner. Containment work was extremely dangerous, and not everyone was qualified to handle it. These jobs were outsourced by the state, and while some companies followed strict rules, others were driven purely by profit. If he ever encountered personnel from other companies, caution would be necessary. The protagonist acknowledged this internally, letting out a quiet sigh as the weight of the responsibility settled in. After a brief pause, he removed the glasses, intending to personally test their effect. As he stood there, the change was immediate. His suppressed presence surged outward naturally, without effort. Wu Yuqing's reaction made the result obvious. Her heartbeat quickened, and a faint blush appeared on her face as she instinctively looked away. The protagonist quickly understood that the glasses worked exactly as described. Satisfied with the confirmation, the scene shifted. The setting moved to city traffic later that day. Inside a bus, the protagonist sat quietly while reviewing the documents Wu Yuqing had given him. As the vehicle moved through the streets, he focused on the information in front of him. Lu Huiying's profile was detailed and direct. She was active almost exclusively in the Southern District, frequenting bars, discos, host clubs, and KTVs. The locations alone painted a clear picture of her lifestyle and influence. As he read further, the situation became clearer. Using the physical enhancement provided by the villainess's crown of glory, she had established her own territory and formed a small gang known as the Rose Gang. With her strength continuously increasing, she preyed on local men, draining them both physically and mentally. The crown itself continuously amplified her desires. The stronger those desires became, the greater the boost to her physical abilities. Left unchecked, the effect would only continue to stack endlessly. The solution, however, was straightforward. Removing the crown would return her to a normal state. The challenge lay in creating the right opportunity to do so. As the bus slowed and reached its destination in the Southern District, the protagonist folded the documents and stood up. Stepping off the bus, he felt another subtle surge of divine energy within him, signaling that his involvement with God relics was only deepening as he moved forward. The scene shifted to the Southern District. On a street corner, Lu Huiying was violently assaulting a man with a bat. A heavy strike landed squarely on his abdomen, forcing blood to spill from his mouth as he collapsed in pain. She casually swung the bat in her hand, clearly enjoying the complete lack of restraint that her current state allowed. Her expression was twisted with satisfaction. To her, acting freely without consequences felt intoxicating. Anyone who tried to interfere or restrain her would only become another target of her violence. From a distance, the protagonist observed everything in silence. His attention was fixed on the crown resting on her head, and disgust rose in his thoughts. Her behavior felt excessive and absurd, but there was no doubt that she was the target he had been searching for. As Lu Huiying prepared to leave, an elderly man approached her cautiously. His posture was submissive, and fear was evident in his movements. She stopped and questioned him instead, clearly not done with her amusement for the day. The old man bowed deeply, offering compliance without resistance. His desperation was obvious. Lu Huiying suddenly closed the distance between them, her expression darkening as her intent became unmistakable. The protagonist, still watching from afar, felt immediate revulsion. The thought of approaching her himself made his skin crawl, and the assignment felt far more unpleasant than expected. Before the situation could escalate further, a group of men arrived, advancing toward Lu Huiying with hostility. Their formation was aggressive, and their intent was clear. They had come seeking revenge. Recognizing the sudden shift, the protagonist decided to remain hidden and continue observing. This unexpected development could reveal valuable information. The leader of the group stepped forward, openly challenging Lu Huiying. It quickly became clear that he was Duan Kaiping, the leader of the Razor Gang. Lu Huiying turned toward him dismissively, showing no recognition or concern. One of her injured subordinates hurriedly explained his identity, confirming that the Razor Gang had suffered greatly at his hands before losing their territory. Lu Huiying approached Duan Kaiping slowly, examining him with obvious interest. Her attention lingered on his physique, and her behavior only further provoked him. Anger exploded from Duan Kaiping. He surged forward and launched a powerful punch, demanding the return of his territory. Lu Huiying evaded the attack effortlessly, moving with speed and confidence that far exceeded his expectations. Enraged, Duan Kaiping continued attacking relentlessly, shouting insults as his strikes repeatedly failed to land. From his vantage point, the protagonist pieced together the situation. The Southern District had originally belonged to the Razor Gang, but Lu Huiying had seized it using the power granted by the Crown, igniting an ongoing feud between the two groups. As the conflict escalated, Duan Kaiping's men joined the fight, charging toward Lu Huiying and her followers. The street quickly descended into chaos as both sides clashed violently. In the confusion, one of Duan Kaiping's men struck the old man's young son in the head with a brick. The child screamed in pain and collapsed to the ground. The sight instantly enraged Lu Huiying. Her attention snapped toward the injured child, and fury surged through her. The old man cried out in despair, rushing toward his son. Gripping her bat tightly, Lu Huiying turned back to her enemies, her rage now fully ignited. Any trace of amusement vanished as her intent shifted toward brutal retaliation. Duan showed a confident expression as he finally became serious. He stepped forward and launched a powerful punch, landing it directly on Lu Huiying's face. The force sent her flying into the air, crashing into nearby debris, which shattered on impact. She recovered quickly, rising with a twisted smile, clearly intrigued by the exchange. She decided to engage him properly instead of treating the fight as entertainment. From a distance, the protagonist continued to observe in silence. Both fighters advanced toward each other again, their movements sharp and forceful. As they clashed repeatedly, the protagonist analyzed Duan Kaiping carefully. His palm strikes were precise and controlled, shaped like a blade, capable of cutting with tremendous force. As the fight continued, both sides exchanged heavy blows. However, despite Duan's superior technique, Liu Huiying suffered only superficial injuries. In pure martial skill, Duan clearly surpassed her, but her body absorbed the damage unnaturally well, making it difficult to injure her seriously. At that moment, the protagonist felt the absorption process complete. Without hesitation, he chose to enhance his physical strength this time, pairing it with his previous speed enhancement. Testing the effect, he picked up a small stone and tossed it lightly before hurling it forward with full force. The stone struck Duan's lower leg. Despite its size, the impact was devastating, shattering the bone instantly. Duan collapsed in pain, screaming uncontrollably. The protagonist confirmed internally that the enhancement was extremely effective. Liu Huiying froze, immediately sensing something was wrong. She spun around, trying to locate the source of the attack. Duan accused someone of a sneak attack while struggling to stand. His companions rushed to support him, retreating quickly while issuing threats before leaving the scene. Liu Huiying watched them go, blood spilling from her mouth, clearly injured but still standing. The strike had caused noticeable damage. At that moment, the protagonist stepped forward and entered the scene. Liu Huiying focused on him, questioning whether he was responsible. The protagonist admitted it calmly, standing with confidence. She suspected he had used some kind of weapon. He neither confirmed nor denied it directly, only implying that it was not meant for her. While observing her stance and movements, the protagonist noted that her fighting style lacked discipline. It was clear she had never undergone formal training. He clenched his fist and prepared himself, deciding to confront her directly rather than relying on external control methods unless absolutely necessary. Liu Huiying reacted with vulgar confidence, attempting to provoke him. The protagonist remained silent, inhaling deeply and maintaining composure. His calm response unsettled her. For the first time, doubt surfaced in her thoughts as she began to reassess him. She demanded to know who he was. The protagonist relaxed his stance slightly and introduced himself simply, giving her a name to remember. The protagonist activated the twin life ability. In an instant, his body surged forward. Fueled by controlled rage, he charged straight at Liu Huiying. Before she could react, a powerful kick landed squarely on her abdomen, forcing blood out of her mouth. Without giving her time to recover, he followed up immediately with a heavy punch to her face. He continued pressing the attack, delivering multiple consecutive punches, each one landing cleanly and without hesitation. The final strike sent her flying backward. Her body crashed into the wall behind her, shattering it completely. Broken concrete and debris collapsed around her, burying her beneath the fragments. The protagonist shook his hand lightly, feeling the recoil from the impact. Even with reinforcement, her body was unnaturally solid. Nearby gang members froze in disbelief. The scene in front of them felt unreal. The wall itself had collapsed, and the person who had previously dominated the area was now buried beneath rubble. The fact that even Duan Kaiping had been suppressed by her made this outcome even harder for them to accept. Moments later, Liu Huiying forced her way out from under the debris. Her expression twisted with rage as she slammed her bat against the ground, directing her fury toward the protagonist. The protagonist observed her calmly, his expression steady. Internally, he recognized that this was the kind of battle he had been craving. Liu Huiying rushed forward again, swinging her bat as she charged. The protagonist avoided the attack effortlessly, stepping aside with precise movement. He grabbed her by the neck and drove his knee in her face while restraining her. Blood spilled again as the impact landed cleanly. Instead of collapsing, Liu Huiying began laughing uncontrollably. Her eyes glowed with madness as she clutched onto the protagonist, convinced he would not escape. Before she could act further, the protagonist raised his hand, focused his strength, and struck directly at her eye with his index finger. She convulsed violently from the pain, losing all composure. Standing before her, the protagonist reflected on his master's teaching. In real combat, morality did not matter. Victory alone determined who had the right to stand and speak. Weak points existed regardless of gender, and exploiting them was simply part of survival. He did not pause. A powerful kick landed once more on her abdomen, driving the air from her lungs. Immediately after, he clasped his hands together and delivered a decisive strike to her head. Her body collapsed face first onto the ground. The violent force caused the crown on her head to dislodge and roll away. The protagonist picked up the fallen crown, holding it in his hand as the battle finally came to an end. The protagonist took a photo of the crown and sent it to Wu Yuqing, informing her that the containment had been completed. Lu Huing lay on the ground nearby, only partially conscious. The protagonist glanced at her briefly and thought that she should at least not die from suffocation. As for the consequences of the harm she caused while wearing the villainess's crown of glory, he decided to leave that matter to the residents who had suffered under her during this time. As the divinity absorption continued, the protagonist noticed that the progress seemed faster than before. This change caught his attention. At the same time, a new option appeared at the bottom of his awareness, making him instinctively focus on it. Before he could examine it further, a presence approached. A white-haired man dressed in a black suit appeared nearby, causing the protagonist to turn toward him in surprise. The man made it clear that the item in the protagonist's hand was not something he was qualified to hold and demanded that it be handed over. The protagonist immediately realized that the divinity absorption had not yet finished. At such a critical moment, allowing interference was not an option. He rejected the demand outright. The man's hostility rose instantly. After assessing the protagonist's condition and compatibility, he judged that despite the protagonist's young age and background, his evaluation level was unexpectedly high. Even so, he still considered him far too weak. The man stepped forward, clearly preparing to force the issue. The protagonist reacted first, striking between the man's legs in an attempt to create an opening. The attack had no effect. The man had clearly anticipated such a move and showed no sign of injury. Realizing the situation was unfavorable, the protagonist immediately turned and ran. The white-haired man pursued him without hesitation, intent on killing him. While fleeing, the protagonist analyzed the situation. The man's body felt unnatural, almost as if it were composed of assembled mechanical parts. He suspected that this person might be a containment agent from another company. The pursuer quickly closed the distance and threw a punch. The protagonist narrowly avoided it and continued running, but it became clear that escape alone would not be enough. The gap between them was overwhelming, and the protagonist understood that prolonged engagement would only worsen his position. Before the absorption process could finish, the man suddenly appeared again, smashing through a wall and landing a direct punch. The protagonist tried to block it, but the force sent him flying backward. His body crashed through multiple walls before finally stopping, embedded deep into the last one. Pain spread through his body as he realized that no matter how he ran, he would eventually be caught. At that moment, the divinity extraction finally completed, unlocking a dormant ability that now met the conditions for activation. Without hesitation, the protagonist chose to activate it. The white-haired man advanced steadily through the broken walls, confident in his superiority and fully expecting the protagonist to surrender. Instead, the protagonist burst out from the shattered wall. In a sudden counterattack, he grabbed the man directly by the face, stopping his advance entirely. Still partially embedded in the wall, the protagonist realizes that the term recipient mentioned earlier was directed at him. After breaking free from his restraint with minimal effort, he steps out of the wall. The white-haired man, observing the protagonist's body and the strange black aura surrounding him, understands that he is facing someone known as a recipient and reacts with shock and fear. At that moment, the protagonist's body undergoes a transformation. Dark shadow, flames envelop him, and all of his injuries recover on their own. The ability responsible for this transformation enhances shadows into a tangible black flame, though its higher form remains locked due to insufficient requirements. The protagonist begins to question the meaning of recipient and why the white-haired man immediately associated the black flame with that title. Before he can think further, the white-haired man attempts to flee. As the man tries to escape, the shadow flames move on their own and begin pursuing him. The protagonist notices that the flames respond automatically to his intent, without any conscious control. This leads him to realize that the shadow flame may function as an automatic attack mechanism. The flames quickly catch up to the fleeing man, engulfing him completely and invading his body from within. Unable to endure the scene unfolding before him, the protagonist becomes physically sick and vomits. After the battle ends, the protagonist gains significant combat experience, resulting in multiple improvements to his physical abilities and combat proficiency. While standing over the unconscious body of the white-haired man, the protagonist carefully examines him. He notices that the man's entire body is covered in artificial skin with extremely high durability. Despite being burned for a long time, only minimal external damage is visible. He realizes that defeating him would have been extremely difficult if the damage had not occurred internally. To compare, the protagonist picks up a nearby stone. Even though it appears solid, it shows signs of damage after only brief exposure to the black flame. He concludes that the flame's destructive power is linked to the density of its target. Additionally, the stone shows no signs of charring and feels cold to the touch, suggesting the flame functions differently from normal fire. Due to the effect of the black flame, the stone gradually disappears from the protagonist's hand. From this, he understands that the black flame does not behave like ordinary fire. Instead, it originates from shadows. As the surrounding shadows diminish, the strength of the black flame weakens as well. He concludes that the greater the amount of nearby shadow, the more shadow flame can be converted, increasing its overall power. After deliberately dispersing the dark flame, the transformation ends and his body returns to its normal state. He realizes that the power was exhausted suddenly, without any clear indication or warning, and he is unable to determine how its cooldown functions. He then takes photographs of the unconscious white-haired man lying on the ground, deciding to set aside his questions for now. He plans to explain the situation involving this individual to Wu Yuqing first. The scene then shifts to the Southern District. Inside a massive building, a long-haired man stands before a grotesque creature composed of flesh and veins. One of his injured subordinates kneels before him, clearly aware that he had been warned repeatedly not to cause trouble recently. In an instant, the long-haired man moves close and grips the subordinate's head, applying pressure with his nails until blood begins to flow. The subordinate suffers intensely, trembling and sweating as the pain worsens. After a brief moment, the long-haired man allows the subordinate to rise and questions him about the two individuals who were sent out earlier. The subordinate reports that they appear to have been destroyed. The long-haired man initially considers White Raven as the cause, but learns that one of the attackers was instead injured by a young man. This revelation angers him greatly. The subordinate, terrified, explains that the youth is named Xue Jing and has no notable background, supposedly just an ordinary person. The idea that such a person could defeat the test subjects fills the long-haired man with rage. Although the test subjects were imperfect, he believes they should not have been overcome by someone ordinary. Enraged, he orders that the youth be captured. Turning his attention back to the massive creature before him, he decides that the captured youth will be personally fed to the sky-lodging insect mother. He believes this will allow the creature to produce stronger offspring, and sees this as another step toward his ultimate ambition of taking control of the planet. The scene shifts to Qingqiang Library. Standing inside the elevator, the protagonist reflects on the mission. He recognizes that the incident escalated far beyond expectations, and is uncertain how Wu Yuqing will handle the aftermath. After a brief moment of concern, he dismisses his worries, deciding that dwelling on it is pointless. He accepts that problems must be faced directly and resolves that, at worst, he will make amends through future achievements. After exiting the elevator, Wu Yuqing greets him with a respectful bow. Her behavior immediately catches him off guard. She takes full responsibility for the unexpected developments during the mission, acknowledging that leaving him to face danger alone was a serious failure on her part. Her formal apology and attitude leave him momentarily stunned. She then informs him that the mission's rank will be upgraded and that compensation will be provided, expressing hope that he will accept it. He agrees without objection, but is internally surprised, as her reaction is completely different from what he had anticipated. As they move together toward a table, Wu Yuqing explains that the identity of the man he killed has been confirmed. The individual was named Zhu Yingquan, born in Source City, and affiliated with Su's containment company as a body modification specialist. According to the company, his actions were deemed personal and unrelated to any official containment mission. After taking their seats, the protagonist considers this explanation questionable, especially given the man's interest in the villainess's crown of glory. Wu Yuqing shares the same concern and presents a map outlining the division between the inner ring and outer ring. Su's containment company operates within the inner ring, while her own organization is based in the outer ring. Given this separation, it would indeed be unreasonable for Su's containment company to dispatch someone so far outside their jurisdiction. She believes this statement holds no obvious loopholes. She then suggests that there may be a deeper story behind the incident and advises the protagonist not to get involved further for the time being, stating that she will handle the matter herself. The protagonist places the crown on the table and removes his glasses, mentioning that he nearly forgot to return both items. Wu Yuqing stops him, insisting that he keep the glasses, as they may still be useful in future missions. She then brings up a disturbing detail from Zhu Yingquan's autopsy report. All of his internal organs had vanished without leaving any trace. She expresses curiosity about how such a result was achieved. Internally, the protagonist reflects on the danger of the shadow flame. He realizes that even he does not fully understand its principles and decides that it would be best to keep this power secret for now. He avoids giving a direct explanation. As he removes the glasses, Wu Yuqing becomes visibly uncomfortable and quickly looks away, her reaction suggesting that the glasses have a significant effect on her perception. She tells him that if he does not wish to explain, he does not have to, acknowledging that everyone has their own secrets, and asks him to put the glasses back on properly. While doing so, the protagonist internally concludes that the glasses are nothing short of a divine artifact. He then turns his attention to a card he received and seeks clarification about its purpose. Wu Yuqing explains that it is a containment card. With it, conducting containment missions in the future will be far more convenient. Realizing the implication, the protagonist understands that this effectively grants him official status. Wu Yuqing confirms this and further explains that, in addition to the conveniences provided by certain official organizations, all data stored within the Qingqing library will now be fully accessible to him. Wu Yuqing stands up from her chair, indicating that she still has pending work to handle. She leaves the area, entrusting the protagonist to explore the library on his own at a relaxed pace. As she departs, the protagonist casually gestures in her direction in farewell. Once alone, excitement begins to surface in his thoughts. He realizes that this may be a rare opportunity to search for information related to the cattail ring. He heads toward the data storage center of the library. As he walks deeper inside, he observes the surroundings carefully and becomes aware that the space feels vast and independent, almost like a world isolated from the outside. He stops in front of a sealed container and notices its label, identifying it as God 018, known as Death Goddess's unreasonable favor. Curious, he reflects that this is a god relic he has never encountered before. He attempts to unlock it by scanning his containment card, but the container reacts by rejecting his access, indicating that his current authorization level is insufficient. He moves on to another container positioned behind it, labeled God 069, Cinderella Boy 1. Based on its higher number, he assumes it should be accessible to him. However, this container also denies his request, once again indicating insufficient permissions. He continues attempting to access multiple containers across different shelves. Each attempt ends the same way, with the system refusing him entry due to lack of clearance. After repeated failures, frustration builds within him. He questions why access is still restricted despite being told that the library's data would be completely open to him. He then considers the possibility that even the cattail ring might require special permissions. Deciding that speculation is pointless, he resolves to locate it first. Eventually, he comes across a container labeled God 1391, Cattail Ring. Feeling uncertain but hopeful, he brings his hands together instinctively before attempting access once more. This time, the container responds positively. The data associated with the cattail ring becomes available. A sense of relief and excitement washes over him as he realizes the access attempt succeeded. However, he is immediately informed that the relic carries a danger level classified as B, which does not align with the protagonist's current clearance as a C-class containment personnel. As a result, only the first 2 layers of information are made available. Following this restriction, the container's internal drawers automatically open. As he reviews the available information, confusion arises. Based on his understanding, the relic merely allows its user to transform into a harmless kitten. He struggles to understand why it is rated at the same danger level as relics capable of large-scale destruction. He takes a seat at a table in the center of the data storage area and removes the documents from the container. As he reads through them, he learns that after wearing the cattail ring for 1 month, the holder gains the ability to switch freely between human and cat forms. He notes that this ability is surprisingly practical. Continuing to read, he encounters a historical record stating that in a past era, a doctor reacted fanatically upon witnessing the cattail ring and subsequently founded what became known as the alien god cult. This term immediately raises questions in his mind. He continues reading, expecting further information related to this cult. The records explain that after the death of a god, the earth fractured, creating vast borderlands across the world. During exploration of these regions, humanity discovered tools capable of communicating with alien gods. Groups driven by ambition and a desire for power began worshipping these entities, forming organizations collectively referred to as alien god cults. Individuals who received power or gifts from these alien gods were labeled as recipients. At this point, a realization strikes him. He finally understands the meaning behind the term recipient, connecting it to earlier events. As he reads further, the historical account deepens. 200 years ago, an alien god cult known as the Lion Sage sect attempted to establish contact with the god Baudet. Despite repeated efforts, the god never responded. That changed when one believer obtained God, 1391, and transformed into a cat, which finally resulted in receiving Bastet's blessing. However, the blessing did not attach itself to the believer, but instead fused with the cat-tail ring itself. From that moment onward, the cat-tail ring began to possess increasingly mysterious and dangerous power. As the fusion progresses, the wearer gradually inherits Bastet's abilities. Ultimately, the process leads to the wearer fully transforming into Bastet. Because of this, the Lion Sage sect will stop at nothing to retrieve the cat-tail ring, even if it means killing its current holder. As this understanding settles in, the protagonist's expression hardens. A grave realization forms in his mind. If this information is accurate, then the true target of the Lion Sage sect is not merely the relic. It is Nar. The protagonist reflects inwardly on past events. He finally understands why Warner had strongly urged him to go to the dojo earlier. If he had not managed to grow stronger in such a short time, both of them would likely have died. He turns to the next page of the record, which details the fusion conditions of God, 1391, the cat-tail ring. After reading it, he understands that the first stage of fusion requires intense emotional stimulation. After that, the same emotion must be repeatedly stimulated in order to deepen the fusion process. The phrase intense emotional stimulation lingers in his mind, triggering memories from the past. His ability involuntarily recreates those moments with extreme clarity, making the experience feel uncomfortably real. He quickly shakes his head, forcing himself to stop. He realizes that continuing to recall those scenes is not something he can endure. If transforming back into human form requires repeating what happened before, then it would mean that he and Nar would have to go through that situation frequently. He has no idea how he could ever explain such a condition to her. Continuing to read, he comes across another section of information. According to the records, the cat-tail ring only grants divine authority and has no inherent side effects. The only real danger associated with it comes from the Lion Sage sect. This discovery eases his mind. The absence of side effects is actually good news. As he reaches the end of the material, confusion sets in. The records abruptly stop without explaining what abilities Bastet actually possesses, nor do they mention how the ring can be removed once worn. He realizes that these unanswered questions are likely due to his low clearance level as a C-class containment personnel. At that moment, his phone receives a notification. He glances at the screen and initially assumes it might be his wages being paid unusually early. After checking the message, he realizes it is actually the compensation transferred by Wu Yuqing. The amount is far larger than he expected. With this sum, he no longer needs to carefully calculate his daily expenses. More importantly, it gives him the freedom to dedicate more time to training and becoming stronger. Without lingering any longer, he leaves the library in a hurry. As he walks away, he decides to buy expensive ingredients that night and prepare a proper meal for Warner. As for the condition required to turn back into human form, he resolves to find another opportunity to explain it to her later. 5 days pass. Inside the protagonist's home, the dining table is filled with several costly dishes. Warner and the protagonist sit together, eating. Warner notices his recent behavior and feels puzzled by his sudden extravagance. She wonders whether he has somehow made money. The protagonist responds vaguely, implying that he had come into wealth briefly. Her confusion deepens, prompting him to explain further. Over the past few days, he learned a technique called the Tremor Armor Technique from his master. While the technique itself is effective, its cultivation process is extremely expensive. Each session requires medicinal supplements and a medicinal bath afterward. Practicing a single set costs 40,000, and he completed 5 sets in total. He did not expect 200,000 to be consumed so quickly. Warner quickly calculates the remaining amount and points out that there should still be over 30,000 left. She questions why only a small amount remains. While she acknowledges that his respect and generosity toward his master are admirable, she firmly warns him to be more careful with money. She reminds him that beyond potions, he will eventually need to purchase weapons and hidden tools. In addition, proper formal attire is necessary for entering high-end venues, and even the cheapest options cost over 100,000. The protagonist is taken aback by this information. He realizes that the expenses ahead are far greater than he had anticipated. Warner points out that buying such luxurious ingredients should be limited to once a month at most. The protagonist responds casually, not arguing with her. As he continues eating, his thoughts drift. He realizes that there are far too many ways to spend money. Payday is still far away, and Wu Yuqing is unlikely to arrange any missions for him anytime soon. If he does not find a way to earn money soon, he and Warner will once again struggle just to get by. After the meal, he looks through available job listings but finds nothing suitable. Left with few options, he sends a message to Chun, explaining that money is tight and asking whether there is any work available. He mentions that bodyguard work or physical labor would both be acceptable. Chun replies quickly, telling him that he asked the right person. Chun instructs him to come to the Hidden Dragon Dojo the next afternoon, explaining that a senior brother will first assess his ability. While the protagonist is still processing the reply, he notices Warner rapidly finishing the remaining food. He reacts instinctively, realizing too late that she has nearly eaten everything. The scene then shifts to the Hidden Dragon Dojo. Inside the dojo, the protagonist practices his newly unlocked soft force technique. His movements are controlled and precise, showing clear progress from his previous training. From the side, Chun observes quietly. He realizes that this junior brother is far from ordinary. In just 5 days, the protagonist has already cultivated the tremor armor technique to an impressive level. A brown-haired female disciple approaches the protagonist, clearly nervous and slightly flustered. She gestures toward the strength testing area, suggesting that he demonstrate his ability so everyone can see. Chun encourages the protagonist to step forward, seeing this as a good opportunity. Although the protagonist hesitates at first, Chun quietly urges him on, pointing out that this is a perfect chance to test the results of his recent training and allow others to witness his strength. Accepting this reasoning, the protagonist steps forward and agrees to try. Some nearby disciples whisper among themselves. Since the protagonist has not been at the dojo for long, they assume his strength is probably lacking and suggest that he should not push himself too hard. Others joke lightly, implying that he might hurt himself. The brown-haired girl becomes visibly annoyed by these comments, clearly believing in the protagonist's ability. The strength testing begins. The punch force machine registers Ning Mingming's previous result at 232 kilograms. The protagonist then steps up and delivers a light punch to the testing device. The motion appears casual, lacking any obvious build-up. This immediately causes confusion among the onlookers. Some wonder why he did not charge up his strength, while others begin to laugh, assuming that he held back out of fear of embarrassment. Suddenly, the testing machine reaches its limit. The device strains, tears apart, and breaks, indicating that the maximum measurable punch force has been exceeded. The surrounding disciples are stunned. None of them expected such a result from such a seemingly gentle strike. Standing calmly before them, the protagonist explains the principle behind what he used. Rather than relying on brute strength, he applied soft force. He clarifies that stronger force does not always mean better results. Soft force is an advanced application of gene force, where power is concentrated into a single point, injected into the target, and then released internally. He suggests that others attempt to comprehend this method themselves. Ning Mingming listens intently, clearly impressed and grateful for the explanation. Some nearby disciples react with subtle jealousy, unable to hide their envy. The protagonist then instructs a short-haired junior to retrieve a punch pad from the warehouse and place it on the force testing machine. Afterward, Chun approaches the protagonist and hands him a business card. Based on the skill he has just demonstrated, Chun feels confident in recommending him. He explains that a powerful individual is currently looking for a bodyguard. While the situation surrounding the job is somewhat complicated, the opportunity itself is genuine. The protagonist carefully examines the card. When he notices the compensation listed, his attention sharpens immediately. Without hesitation, driven by instinct and necessity, he expresses a strong desire to take the job. The scene then shifts to the Rueju Hotel. The protagonist steps out of a luxurious car and walks into the hotel. His presence immediately draws attention from the people inside. Based on his attire and bearing, several guests quietly observe him, trying to guess his identity. Some assume he is a martial artist rather than a wealthy second-generation heir attending the banquet, while others speculate that he must be part of the hired security, though his young age makes them doubtful. Hearing the surrounding whispers, the protagonist smiles inwardly. He recalls the words his senior sisters once told him, realizing that appearances truly do matter. His thoughts drift back to a past memory. At that time, one senior sister had questioned his choice of clothing, clearly surprised. The protagonist had replied that there was nothing wrong with them and that they were comfortable to wear. The senior sister, however, insisted that clothes shape how others perceive a person, warning him that dressing too cheaply would invite contempt. She then produced a red blazer she had prepared for him, proudly explaining that it was designed by a famous designer. The protagonist had responded awkwardly, feeling that it was far too flashy and unnecessary, as he was not attending a blind date. At that moment, senior sister Manga appeared, holding a black martial-style outfit. Another senior sister immediately reacted with jealousy, complaining that she had arrived first. Returning to the present, the protagonist reflects inwardly that when it comes to taste, senior sister Meng truly stands above the rest. From a distance, two beautiful women watch him as he walks through the hotel. One of them is clearly captivated by his appearance, while the other seems tempted to approach him. Nearby, two men dressed elegantly also observe him closely. One of them wonders whether the protagonist could be a high-level disciple from the Hidden Dragon Dojo. His companion quickly dismisses the idea, explaining that he has seen all 6 direct disciples of the dojo, including the youngest female disciple, and does not recognize this person. He further reasons that although the Dragon King, Li Qi, once intended to accept a 7th disciple, that person would have to be an extraordinary prodigy with exceptional talent and physique. In his view, the protagonist appears more like a handsome youth than a powerful martial artist. The first man, however, disagrees. He notes that the protagonist's lower body is extremely stable, with each step measured precisely, neither more nor less. His upper body remains completely steady, showing no unnecessary movement. This level of body control and force delivery clearly indicates advanced martial skill. The second man remains unconvinced, arguing that no matter how refined one's force control is, a single person would still lose when facing overwhelming numbers. Frustrated by this narrow-minded view, the first man storms off, no longer willing to continue the discussion. As the protagonist approaches the reception counter, a male receptionist steps forward and verifies his identity as the martial artist responsible for security. The protagonist introduces himself as a member of the Hidden Dragon Dojo. The receptionist then provides him with a map and explains the job arrangement. This event has hired 6 martial artists in total, each assigned to oversee a specific area. The protagonist is assigned responsibility for the stage area, which has relatively poor lighting and therefore requires extra attention. Taking the map, the protagonist responds calmly. He remarks inwardly that with so many martial artists present, serious trouble is unlikely to occur. However, the receptionist makes it clear that precaution is still necessary. Hiring extra personnel is simply a way to prevent problems before they arise. With that, the receptionist excuses himself to attend to other duties. The protagonist acknowledges this and turns his attention toward his assigned area, ready to carry out his responsibility. While observing the surrounding area, the protagonist reflects inwardly that calling in extra manpower is not unusual, but hiring 6 martial artists clearly indicates something serious. Beyond that, a large number of bodyguards have also been deployed. Judging by their equipment and posture, they are all well-trained professionals. The number of surveillance cameras is also far beyond what a normal hotel would require. From his experience, such excessive preparation only happens when something abnormal has already occurred. This makes him wonder what kind of incident could justify such a large-scale arrangement. Soon after, a man dressed in white approaches him. The man introduces himself as a member of the Tiger Soul Dojo named Li Zhaoquan. He makes it clear that he has no intention of causing trouble, but as fellow martial artists, it is reasonable to understand each other's strength beforehand. The protagonist agrees, understanding that this so-called exchange is a customary way for martial artists to gauge one another's level. He realizes that the man likely doubts his strength due to his young age. At the same time, the protagonist also sees this as a chance to evaluate his own standing. As the two begin crossing hands, several people nearby take notice. A red-haired man recognizes the protagonist and reacts with surprise, while a short-haired woman curiously asks for opinions on who might win. Before any conclusion can be reached, a pink-haired man arrives, immediately drawing attention from the surrounding crowd. His presence alone is enough to make others react with respect. While observing the exchange, the pink-haired man quickly assesses the situation. In his view, although the protagonist appears slender, his body has clearly undergone intense tempering and is far tougher than it looks. His internal energy is clean and stable, far beyond what Li Xiaoquan can contend with. The red-haired man, hearing this evaluation, feels shocked. He cannot understand how the protagonist's strength has grown so rapidly in such a short time. On the other hand, Li Xiaoquan initially assumes that the protagonist has no visible flow of energy and dismisses him as inexperienced. However, as the exchange continues, the protagonist gradually increases the pressure in his grip. Li Xiaoquan soon realizes something is wrong. The force pressing back at him suddenly surges beyond his expectations, and no matter how hard he tries, he cannot suppress it. As the pressure intensifies, Li Xiaoquan struggles to maintain his composure. A faint cracking sound reaches the protagonist's ears, causing him to immediately grow concerned. He fears that he may have unintentionally injured the other man. Li Xiaoquan, however, forcefully maintains a calm appearance, masking the pain and praising the protagonist's ability before withdrawing from the exchange. He quickly excuses himself and leaves the area. Once inside the restroom, away from others, Li Xiaoquan finally breaks down. Clutching his injured hand, he curses inwardly, overwhelmed by the pain. In his mind, the image of the protagonist lingers, no longer as a mere junior, but as something far more terrifying than he had anticipated. The protagonist briefly wondered if the man was really fine, since the sound earlier had clearly been bones breaking. At that moment, a red-haired man approached him. The protagonist turned toward him and immediately recognized the familiar face. It was Pei Youguang, someone he had not seen in a long time. The scene then shifted to the stage area. After entering, the protagonist realized that Pei Youguang truly came from a wealthy background, something he had previously doubted. Pei Youguang casually explained his family situation, mentioning that his comfortable life depended largely on his elder brother's attitude toward him. The protagonist then understood that Pei Youguang had approached him because of the earlier exchange with Li Xiaoquan. That display had caught the attention of Pei Youguang's elder brother, a talented individual who had entered Inner Ring University through the martial arts exam. As Pei Xiao arrived on the stage, Pei Youguang subtly indicated him. The protagonist acknowledged it without much reaction. Pei Youguang also pointed out that several young ladies and wealthy women nearby were interested in getting to know the protagonist and asked about his availability. The protagonist made it clear that he still had work to do and would not stay. He also expressed that casual acquaintance was fine, but real connections should be pursued personally rather than through intermediaries. With that, the protagonist prepared to leave. From behind, Pei Youguang watched him go, silently admiring his presence. Nearby, some of the women agreed with the protagonist's attitude and began approaching him directly. One woman stepped forward confidently, followed by others who showed the same interest. The protagonist, however, noticed a few unfamiliar men nearby and felt something was off, as he had not been informed about anyone delivering items. As he tried to move toward them, one of the women grabbed his arm to stop him. Feeling overwhelmed by the situation, the protagonist finally took out his phone, deciding to end the interaction quickly by exchanging contact information. The woman responded with a satisfied smile, and several people nearby followed along, showing the same interest. At the same time, the strange men the protagonist had noticed earlier revealed their purpose. One of them activated a detonator. As the device turned on, it began emitting light, and multiple laser-like beams spread out from it. The protagonist's phone suddenly malfunctioned. At first, he suspected a simple electrical issue, but after quickly observing his surroundings, he realized something was wrong. Moments later, the power in the entire area shut down. Confusion spread among the crowd as people attempted to use their phones for light, only to find that none of the devices were functioning. The protagonist calmly assessed the situation. His phone had been fully charged, yet it was unusable. In the darkness, not a single person was able to activate a phone or any electronic device. Combined with the complete loss of lighting, it became clear that all electrical equipment had failed at once. This strongly indicated the use of an electromagnetic pulse, a high-level method designed to disable electronic systems instantly. What puzzled him was the scale of such a method, which seemed excessive if the goal was merely to kill someone. Suddenly, the sound of shattering glass echoed through the building. Startled by the noise, a nearby woman panicked and clung to the protagonist. He immediately understood that a serious incident was unfolding. The scene then shifted to the banquet area. People reacted with confusion, speculating about the source of the noise while checking for others around them. Some began to notice that individuals who had been nearby moments earlier were now missing. Pei Youguang lit a lighter, providing the first visible source of light in the darkness. Pei Xiao quickly realized the danger and instructed everyone to stop moving and stay grouped together. Before order could be restored, a sudden sound came from nearby. Panic spread as someone was attacked and killed instantly. The realization that blood was present pushed the crowd into chaos, and people began running blindly. Pei Xiao attempted to stop them, but an attacker suddenly struck at him. He managed to dodge, though he was slightly injured. Another attack followed, which he countered, knocking the attacker to the ground. However, before he could recover fully, an even stronger strike was launched toward him. Pei Youguang reacted in time, pushing Pei Xiao out of the way and saving him. The attack instead hit a nearby person, killing him instantly. In the dim light, they finally saw the attacker clearly. It was a creature resembling a giant grasshopper. Both brothers panicked as the creature prepared to strike again. With no clear path of escape left, the situation seemed desperate. At that moment, the protagonist appeared. He descended from above and delivered a powerful kick directly into the creature, smashing it into the ground and halting its assault. He then looked at the creature, trying to understand exactly what it was. The force of the protagonist's kick drove the insect-like creature straight into the wall behind it, embedding its body deep into the surface. As he observed the creature, the protagonist realized it was the same type of enemy he had encountered before. The ease with which he had sent it flying confirmed that his recent training had not been wasted, as such an outcome would have been impossible in the past. The people nearby reacted in shock, amazed that the monster had been sent crashing into the wall with what appeared to be a casual kick. Others quickly noticed the absence of the bodyguard experts from the various dojos and realized they had already fled long ago. Pei Youguang expressed his gratitude to the protagonist for saving both him and his older brother. However, the protagonist immediately warned everyone not to approach, as the creature had not yet been killed. As expected, the creature soon broke free from the wall and launched another attack. While evading its assault, the protagonist assessed the situation. The creature's vitality was far greater than before, suggesting that it had evolved. He decided to test its limits, knowing that if he could not overpower it, retreating would be the wiser option. There was no reason to risk his life for such a small reward. Gathering strength, he concentrated power into his elbow and struck the creature directly. The impact sent it skidding violently across the floor, accompanied by the sound of bones crushing. The protagonist pressed forward. At that moment, he realized that moving freely in the darkness was not a unique advantage possessed by the creature alone. After the earlier kick, his vision had suddenly become clear despite the lack of light. The skill he was using had unexpectedly granted him night vision, a detail that had not been clearly mentioned before. He continued to strike the creature repeatedly, maintaining complete control of the engagement. From the side, Li Zhaoquan noticed that the protagonist was able to hold his own against the monster. Pei Xiao, however, observed more closely and realized that despite his precise dodges, the protagonist had not retreated even a single step. He understood that the protagonist was deliberately holding his ground to protect everyone else. Li Zhaoquan then urged the others to leave, knowing their presence would only distract him. The group agreed, deciding to escape and seek help instead. Once everyone had finally evacuated, the protagonist felt a sense of relief. With no one left to protect, he could finally fight without restraint. Turning his attention fully to the creature, he prepared himself for the next exchange. The creature rushed toward him once again. The protagonist narrowly avoided the attack and immediately noticed something was different. The beast's speed had increased significantly, revealing that it had been hiding its true capabilities. The creature then turned toward him and began laughing. Suddenly, the surroundings shattered. The world around the protagonist collapsed into nothingness, and he found himself drifting in a void. Confusion set in as he questioned whether he had fallen into some kind of illusion or technique. For a moment, the possibility of death crossed his mind, but he quickly dismissed it. After investing so much time and money in mastering martial arts, losing to a creature like this was unacceptable. Something had clearly gone wrong, and the cause lay elsewhere. Within the void, the protagonist fell and landed upon the massive hand of a dragon. As he stared at the creature, a sense of familiarity surfaced in his mind, as though he had encountered it somewhere before. At that exact moment, the insect-like creature seized the opening and struck his chest with a direct punch. However, before the impact could fully take effect, a golden and blue aura surged outward, enveloping the protagonist's body. His chest began to glow, followed by his eyes, as a powerful force awakened within him. He stabilized his stance, preparing for battle, and retaliated immediately. His counterattack was decisive. A single punch landed squarely on the creature's head, and the sheer force of the blow shattered it completely, severing the head from the body. As the creature collapsed, the protagonist sensed that he had grasped something profound, a realization far greater than mere victory. Despite the destruction of its head, the creature's body continued to move. Observing this, the protagonist quickly understood the reason. Although it had mutated, its essence remained that of cockroach. Such creatures could survive for days, even without a head. Its true weakness lay elsewhere, specifically in the ganglion located beneath the esophagus. Without hesitation, he struck the creature again, targeting its lower abdomen. He extracted the vital organ and confirmed that this was indeed the source sustaining it. Even among ordinary cockroaches, such a ganglion would never reach this size, further proving how unnatural the creature was. As the threat was finally neutralized, the people who had been hiding beneath tables slowly emerged. Realization spread through the crowd that the monster had been killed. Shock, relief, and excitement followed as many began to recognize the protagonist's overwhelming strength and speculate about his background, with some even expressing interest in supporting him financially. Nearby, Li Xiaoquan was approached by others who openly expressed admiration for his courage in having confronted someone of such caliber earlier. Though outwardly composed, he was drenched in sweat. Internally, he realized that during their earlier exchange, the protagonist had not even used a fraction of his true strength. The fact that he had shown restraint instead of crippling him filled Li Xiaoquan with both gratitude and fear. Sensing that the situation was far from over, the protagonist urged everyone to take advantage of the moment and evacuate immediately. He felt strongly that the incident was far more complex than it appeared on the surface. Someone noticed that the protagonist had been injured, causing concern to spread once again. Shortly after, the host of the banquet approached him and identified himself, seeking clarification about whether the incident had truly been accidental. After receiving the host's information, the protagonist explained his conclusion. The blackout was not natural, but the result of an electromagnetic pulse, almost certainly man-made. The creature itself had likely been deliberately released inside the venue. Taken together, the objective was clear: a coordinated attempt to kill everyone present. The host reacted with visible anger and resolved to have the matter thoroughly investigated. However, the protagonist remained skeptical. The excessive number of surveillance cameras and hired martial artists indicated that danger had been anticipated in advance. Insisting on holding the banquet under such conditions only raised further suspicion. Given that the attendees were all influential individuals, the motive behind targeting them became even more troubling. In his assessment, the host was concealing more than he revealed. Despite the monster's death, the protagonist emphasized that the danger had not yet passed. He instructed everyone to leave in an orderly manner, move carefully, and use any available light sources to guide their way. Before departing, the host attempted to probe further by questioning the nature of the creature. The protagonist deflected the inquiry, maintaining his role as a bodyguard whose responsibility was limited to ensuring safety, not uncovering deeper truths. Internally, he recognized the attempt for what it was. Someone was already testing him. The deeper he looked, the clearer it became that the situation was far more dangerous and complicated than he had initially assumed. After reaching the lounge area, the protagonist sat quietly on a chair. Panic spread among the survivors as several people hurried to contact their families, desperate to leave the hotel and unwilling to ever return. While resting, the protagonist assessed the situation inwardly and felt that the gains from this incident were far from insignificant. At that moment, the system interface appeared. The intense deathmatch had greatly stimulated his potential, granting a massive increase in fitness, health preservation, running, combat fighting, accuracy, charm technique, and visualization experience. Through the life and death struggle, he gained deep insights into combat, long-distance raids, and killing intent, successfully learning a new killing-type movement technique. He also visualized the scene of a true dragon sweeping across the sea of clouds, leading to multiple level promotions across his attributes. After processing the information, the protagonist realized that several experience gains had reached 4-digit values and that the specialization requirements had been fulfilled. Almost immediately, his body began to recover on its own. Upon checking himself, he discovered that all injuries had completely healed, as if his status had been fully restored after leveling up. The system interface appeared again, informing him that the conditions had been met to convert basic force delivery into special force delivery through specialization. Confusion surfaced as he considered whether this was related to his comprehension of the cloud ceiling tale, and whether the special force delivery was tied to the hidden dragon martial arts. Concluding that special force delivery was unquestionably superior, he made the choice without hesitation. The system confirmed the successful specialization. His force delivery level increased significantly, with a large amount of accumulated experience converted into hidden dragon force. A powerful sensation surged through his body. It felt as though long-rusted pathways had been lubricated, allowing gene force to flow with unprecedented smoothness. Recognizing the rarity of this opportunity, he immediately decided to take advantage of it and began practicing the tremor armor technique once more. Not long after, the medical team arrived to treat the injured. When they turned their attention toward the protagonist, shock spread upon discovering that he was fully recovered and already immersed in meditation. The scene then shifted to the Hidden Dragon Dojo. Inside the dojo, the protagonist received treatment from his senior sister. Concern was evident as she reflected on how a routine bodyguard commission had escalated into an encounter with such a monster. The dojo master soon appeared, explaining that the dojo's commissions were inherently dangerous, as martial artists constantly lived on the edge of life and death. Seeking answers, the protagonist inquired about the monster's origin. The dojo master admitted he was not fully certain, only that the creature was likely connected to the borderlands. This caused the protagonist to reflect inwardly on the naturally occurring rift mentioned in the data that appeared after the god's death, wondering what truly existed within it. The dojo master advised him not to overthink it, emphasizing that survival itself was already a great blessing. Moreover, through this experience, the protagonist had comprehended the hidden dragon style's killing move, Cloud Ceiling Tail. For a martial artist, tempering oneself between life and death remained the greatest teacher. The protagonist explained to his master that he seemed to have comprehended the essence of the hidden dragon style. The dojo master was so shocked that he stood up from his wheelchair and moved closer to him. After carefully examining the protagonist's hand, the master lost his composure, fell to the ground, and realized that the protagonist had unknowingly nurtured a dragon within his body. The senior sister, confused by their reaction, could not understand what they were referring to. The master, however, was clearly pleased. He explained that the hidden dragon style was not merely a martial technique, but a method of cultivating a living dragon force within the physical body. This dragon was not an illusion, but a real force with its own spirituality. From that moment onward, martial cultivation became a process of nourishing that inner dragon. According to the master, this was the true essence of the hidden dragon style, and the protagonist had already grasped the key step towards surpassing human limits. The master then clarified what breaking the limit meant. He explained that once the body had fully perfected skin, flesh, tendons, bones, and blood, progress normally stopped. To go further, one had to elevate the level of life itself. This involved remolding the physical body. Although the appearance remained human, the essence of life changed. Those who achieved this state were known by Taoists as earthly immortals and by Buddhists as living Buddhas, capable of living far beyond ordinary lifespans while maintaining peak physical condition. While listening, the protagonist noticed that the master's crippled legs were likely the result of a failed attempt at this transformation. The master reassured him that he had already crossed a critical threshold, greatly reducing the risk of failure. From here on, steady and patient cultivation was all that was required. The senior sister then questioned why the master had still grown old despite once being powerful enough to cross the dragon gate. The master revealed that the dragon he had nurtured was killed. This revelation shocked both disciples. The master went on to recount his past. In the North District, he had relied on his overwhelming martial strength and acted recklessly, constantly engaging in duels alongside Manhwa Sang. His arrogance led him to offend many powerful enemies. When they failed to defeat him directly, they targeted Manhwa Sang's family instead. Consumed by anger, the master sought revenge without restraint, killing all who stood in his way. For a time, he believed himself invincible, but eventually retribution arrived. A powerful enemy shattered his legs and destroyed the dragon within him, breaking his spirit and leaving him crippled. When others abandoned him, only Meng Basang remained loyal. To escape their enemies and protect Qin Jiao, they left the North District and eventually established the Hidden Dragon Dojo in this remote area. Although the master admitted that thoughts of revenge still lingered, he explained that his enemies were figures from the inner ring of the North District, far beyond their current reach. He considered the matter part of the past and advised the protagonist not to dwell on it unless he someday legitimately entered the inner ring. Later, the scene shifted to the outskirts of the city. As the protagonist walked toward his apartment, he received confirmation that a large sum of money from the hotel had been transferred into his bank account, leaving him with a substantial balance. He noted the efficiency of the hotel's payment process. After returning home, he entered the apartment but found Warner absent once again. Sensing something unusual, he activated his visualization ability and noticed movement outside. Looking through the window, he saw two unfamiliar men approaching, and he immediately realized that Warner was in danger. Warner confronted the two men, questioning why they had returned after fleeing earlier. One of them explained that the infinite dragon crown had reacted to her, indicating that she possessed outstanding aptitude and could become a suitable recipient. He suggested that with the support of the main sect, their forces could be rebuilt. Warner was clearly shaken by this revelation. Before the discussion could continue, the protagonist stepped in, making it clear that Warner was unwilling. Warner was surprised by his sudden appearance, and the protagonist realized from their exchange that these men were connected to her sect. One of the men warned that if Warner continued staying with the protagonist, Kant Security Company might discover his existence and implicate him. The mention of Kant Security Company caused Warner to hesitate. The protagonist, however, could not ignore what he had heard. As the man elaborated, he implied that Kant Security Company posed a serious threat and that the protagonist would inevitably be dragged into danger if Warner stayed. While Warner remained conflicted, the protagonist reflected on the true nature of Kant Security Company. After the death of the god, the world had briefly descended into chaos, forcing authorities to delegate law enforcement power to private security organizations. Kant Security Company was one of these groups, but unlike the others, it expanded rapidly and grew beyond control, becoming deeply entrenched and extremely dangerous. Ning Pingna's concealment had once been effective, but the arrival of the dragon sect had significantly increased the risk of exposure. Even so, the protagonist felt no fear at the thought of facing Kant Security Company. He made his stance clear that Warner would not return with them. Warner was startled, but deeply moved. The man mocked the idea that the protagonist could protect her, emphasizing the overwhelming strength of Kant Security Company. The protagonist, however, remained firm, believing that no conclusion could be drawn without facing the situation directly. As the man continued to belittle him, Warner finally lost her patience. She expressed her anger at being dragged into trouble against her will, explaining that she had never wanted to become the dragon sect's leader and had been forced into the role by someone else. She rejected the idea of receiving any so-called inheritance and insisted that she would not leave. She also firmly stated her trust in the protagonist's ability to protect her. The protagonist supported her without hesitation, and the two of them left together, ignoring the man's displeasure. Meanwhile, elsewhere, inside a laboratory, a white-haired man stood beside an abomination. He was astonished by the report that Number 1 had been beaten to death by a 17-year-old high school student. Even Cheng Xian, at the same age, would have struggled against Number 1. The existence of such a powerful young genius in Qingsheng deeply unsettled him. A short-haired boy offered a different perspective, explaining that the so-called genius from the news was not truly comparable. In his view, the little senior brother had only trained in martial arts briefly at the age of 17, whereas the person mentioned in the report was likely cultivated in secret by the Hidden Dragon Dojo for a long time and had only revealed his strength through a single shocking achievement. The white-haired man showed little interest in continuing the discussion. Although the expected outcome had not been achieved, he considered the incident acceptable, as several deaths had already occurred and served as a warning to the governing council. He then shifted the focus to Number 9 and requested an update. The short-haired boy reported that Number 9 had consumed Number 7 the previous night. Despite being born for only 10 days, its growth rate was already abnormally fast. After observing the situation, the long-haired man concluded that Number 9 was currently the most cost-effective perfected individual. Future feeding and production would therefore prioritize it. He also instructed that number 9 should be allowed to make a public appearance at an appropriate time. Since the high school student mentioned in the news attended Qingsheng Affiliated High School, the best school in the city, any incident involving that location would likely increase public support for the proposed bill. The sword-haired boy acknowledged the order respectfully. The scene then shifted to the Hidden Dragon Dojo. While practicing, the protagonist focused entirely on cultivation and self-improvement, believing that growing stronger was the only way to resolve all future problems, whether by solving the issues themselves or eliminating those who caused them. As his training continued, the protagonist gained a deeper understanding of one of the Hidden Dragon style's core techniques, a powerful move designed to penetrate defenses by driving gene force directly into an opponent's body. Recognizing its destructive potential, he resolved to master it thoroughly. Not long after, Chen arrived excitedly and informed him of unexpected news. The monster incident at Rueju Hotel had drawn attention, and the wealthy individuals who had been saved expressed their gratitude through massive donations to the Hidden Dragon Dojo. These funds were designated entirely as the protagonist's remuneration, amounting to 22 million. The sheer scale of the sum surprised him, though he acknowledged that the wealthy knew how to handle such matters. Chun then handed him a cultivation guide prepared by the master, explaining that with such resources, he could no longer afford to train frugally. Upon reviewing the plan, the protagonist initially felt confident, but as he read through the detailed expenses, various rare pills, medicinal baths, specialized massages, and high-pressure cultivation chambers, his confidence quickly faded. The realization set in that the entire fortune would soon be consumed by cultivation costs. He could only sigh at the truth that martial arts cultivation was an endeavor where wealth vanished as quickly as it was gained. Chun then showed him another piece of news. Information about the monster incident had been leaked to the media, and the protagonist had already been labeled a hero of Qingsheng. At that moment, Chun received a call from an unknown number. Not recognizing it, the protagonist answered instead. The instant he heard the voice on the other end, his expression changed in shock. While on the call, the protagonist's teacher scolded him harshly for being absent from class for an extended period, accusing him of skipping school under the excuse of part-time work. The teacher made it clear that becoming a local hero did not exempt him from attending classes. The protagonist hurriedly explained that his family had recently encountered some trouble. The teacher then brought up the upcoming school sports meet and strongly implied that the protagonist will be signed up for multiple track events, listing several distances in succession. From this, the protagonist realized that the real intention was to have him bring honor to the class through competition. At that moment, the senior sister appeared nearby and gestured to him. Using the interruption as an excuse, the protagonist ended the call, while the teacher warned him not to miss the event when the time came. Turning his attention to the senior sister, he asked what she needed. She informed him that there was a request made specifically for him, emphasizing that the reward was extremely generous. Curious, he asked for details and learned that the request involved a sparring session. The client was also a martial artist who had grown interested after seeing the recent news and wanted to test his skills. The offered reward was 500,000, a sum that genuinely surprised the protagonist. The scene then shifted to the Inner Ring's North District. This area was known as the residence of high-ranking government officials and was often referred to as the Northern Wealth. It was said that a random individual there could earn in minutes what an Outer Ring household made in an entire year. As the protagonist arrived in the district by car, he could not help but feel overwhelmed. Upon reaching the destination, the driver informed him that they had arrived. Stepping out, the protagonist reflected again on the unusually high payment for a simple sparring session, concluding that such an amount was probably insignificant to someone of that status. Standing before the entrance, he observed the sheer size of the estate, noting that it was nearly as large as half his school. He also noticed two brothers nearby and felt puzzled by their presence. When he approached them, it became clear that neither of them had personally submitted the request to the dojo. Instead, they explained that someone else had used them as intermediaries to arrange the meeting. One of the brothers emphasized that he was only following his father's instructions and would not dare to disobey him. The protagonist initially assumed that the father himself wanted to spar, but this was quickly denied. The explanation was vague, suggesting that another individual had asked the father for a favor. As they began walking together, the situation became clearer. The person behind the request came from an official organization, though the exact affiliation was unknown. The brother's father had stressed that this person's requirements must be met as thoroughly as possible. During a dinner the previous night, he had instructed them to arrange a meeting with the protagonist, which led to the current situation. Pei Xiao questioned whether the protagonist truly had no idea who was behind the meeting. The protagonist made it clear that he had no clues at all, though inwardly he wondered if the matter was connected to Kant's security company. As Pei Xiao opened the door, he warned the protagonist not to lower his guard. Even though the protagonist was strong, the person inside might be stronger than anyone he had encountered before. Inside the room, a well-built man sat calmly on a chair. His presence alone made it clear that he was no ordinary individual. The protagonist greeted him politely, but while observing him closely, he noticed scars on the webbing between his thumb and forefinger, along with a bullet wound on his shoulder. These were not injuries an ordinary person would have. The man resembled someone accustomed to military life and real combat. Without wasting time, the man moved directly toward confrontation. The protagonist immediately took a fighting stance, suspecting that if this person truly came from that security company, the encounter could not be taken lightly. When their punches collided, a shockwave spread throughout the room, cracking the ground beneath them. Mandrill initially assumed the protagonist's hand would be severely damaged, but to his confusion, the protagonist showed no signs of injury and instead counterattacked immediately. A powerful strike landed on Mandrill's back, sending him flying and embedding him halfway into the ground. Both Pei brothers were stunned. One realized that if he had taken Mandrill's punch directly, his entire hand would have been destroyed, yet the protagonist remained unharmed and even managed to counter. The other wondered how much strength the protagonist was still concealing. As the protagonist approached Mandrill, he assessed that with this level of skill, the man should not merely be an ordinary rich individual. Mandrill soon freed himself from the ground, appearing exhilarated rather than injured, urging the fight to continue. The protagonist found it strange. An attack capable of blowing apart a cockroach monster had failed to deal effective damage. The sensation reminded him of a previous encounter with Tu Inkuan, making him suspect something unusual. When he questioned Mandrill's nature, it was revealed that Mandrill possessed a military-grade xenograft. Beneath his skin was a B1 protective membrane, an entry-level military enhancement designed to absorb shock, particularly effective against internal martial force. It explained why the earlier strike had little effect. Mandrill attempted to entice the protagonist with the idea of installing a similar enhancement, but the protagonist showed no interest. Mandrill expressed disdain toward martial artists who refused such modifications, claiming they failed to accept the changing times. Advancing once more, Mandrill demonstrated another modification. By clapping his hands, he released a powerful ultrasonic wave that caused intense dizziness. The protagonist was forced to cover his ears as the sound assaulted him. Mandrill explained that the closer the target, the stronger the effect, rendering evasion meaningless. Confident in his advantage, Mandrill pressed forward. However, just as he closed in, the protagonist stopped him with a single palm, bringing the advance to a halt and leaving Mandrill completely stunned. The protagonist applied slight pressure and lifted Mandrill into the air before tossing him aside. By directing gene force past the skin and protective membrane, he sent the force directly into Mandrill's body. Unable to resist, Mandrill crashed to the ground. The protagonist observed that knocking someone unconscious did not require excessive strength. A precise and controlled strike was sufficient. Mandrill soon lost consciousness. A faint sound came from Mandrill's body, indicating that his consciousness had been cut off and confirming that he was no match. From this, the protagonist realized that a communicator had been implanted inside Mandrill's body. He questioned the identity and intentions of the people behind this encounter. The communicator responded that someone would arrive shortly. The protagonist urged them to be quick, noting that he did not have much time. Soon after, Pei Yowang arrived with his brother. They speculated that this might be some kind of test conducted by a mysterious organization and wondered what such people wanted with the protagonist. The protagonist dismissed the idea, though he acknowledged that it did resemble such a situation. Mandrill's body suddenly began to tremble. The protagonist prompted him to get up if he was conscious. Mandrill soon regained awareness, clearly injured, and wondered how his previous technique had been countered. The protagonist assessed that the technique relied on sonic waves affecting the brain and that neutralizing it only required applying a stronger opposing force. Mandrill realized that the protagonist had not yet used his full strength. He instructed the Pei brothers to leave the area, and they complied. Once alone, Mandrill revealed that he was indeed affiliated with an official organization and that his purpose was to recruit the protagonist. The protagonist rejected the offer outright, expressing dissatisfaction with the organization's methods and stating that even a proper invitation would not have changed his decision. Inwardly, he reflected that he was content with his current life, practicing martial arts peacefully, living steadily, and occasionally taking on containment tasks suited him well. Mandrill attempted to persuade him further, admitting that his methods were somewhat unrestrained. He emphasized the benefits of joining, pointing out that advanced protective membranes like his own were impossible to obtain through ordinary means and would be provided freely upon joining. The protagonist remained unconvinced, noting that Mandrill had still been injured despite those enhancements. Mandrill acknowledged the protagonist's talent, but warned that the human body had limits and that eventually, the inability to advance further would become unbearable. The protagonist smiled and calmly refused the offer. He believed it was more interesting to rely on an unmodified body rather than artificial enhancements when facing modified humans. Mandrill grew irritated by the refusal, but his communicator abruptly interrupted him, criticizing his poor recruitment skills. Mandrill realized that the voice belonged to his captain and instinctively looked up. Both he and the protagonist raised their heads as a figure descended directly from the sky. As the figure came into view, the protagonist recognized the falling silhouette as Voidblade. A white-haired woman landed in front of them. She revealed her identity as the captain of White Raven Squad 838 and indicated that Mandrill was a member of her squad. The protagonist quietly recalled that this same person had previously introduced him to Wu Yuqing and questioned why she was attempting to recruit him again. Internally, he sensed that this time the approach was driven by higher authority rather than personal initiative. Aside from recruitment, she had another purpose for appearing. She brought up the monster the protagonist had killed several days earlier and questioned whether he knew its true origin. The protagonist identified it as a Borderlands creature, but she clarified that this was only partially correct. She explained that the creature did possess the defining characteristics of Borderlands organisms, including a core that served as its power source. Such cores were not always located in the heart and could exist in various parts of the body. As long as the core remained intact, the creature could revive repeatedly. The protagonist realized that he had unknowingly destroyed the core during the fight, which explained the outcome. When he asked why she claimed it was not entirely a Borderlands creature, she identified it as a sky-lodging insect mother originating from Borderlands F-056, known as Carrion Lake. Its assessed danger level was extremely high. Noticing the protagonist's confusion, she proceeded to explain the danger level system using combat data gathered from Mandrill. Based on the evaluation, the protagonist's current danger level was far beyond that of an ordinary adult, while the sky-lodging insect mother, at peak condition, exceeded even that by a massive margin. She clarified that such a high rating represented an extreme scenario. In its unawakened state, the sky-lodging insect mother was far less threatening and primarily functioned as a reproductive organism. It possessed the ability to absorb genetic traits from consumed creatures and produce corresponding offspring, even combining multiple genetic sources into new species. About a month earlier, a smuggling group had captured one such organism from Carrion Lake and transported it out of the Borderlands. The official forces had pursued them into Qingqing's southern district, but eventually lost track of the trail. The recent incident involving the protagonist had finally provided a new lead. From this explanation, the protagonist understood that the cockroach-like monster he had killed was an offspring created by the sky-lodging insect mother. As the implications settled in, he connected the traits he had observed and realized that the creature had likely been formed through the fusion of a cockroach and a human. The leader pointed out that the cockroach man's strength had been steadily increasing. She believed the person controlling the sky-lodging insect mother was continuously enhancing it, and because the protagonist had repeatedly disrupted their plans, he had already become a target. The protagonist realized that the invitation to join was not meant as protection. The leader made it clear that her intention was recruitment. She acknowledged his young age, his exceptional talent, and his courage in facing Borderlands creatures directly. She explained that White Raven, backed by the agency, possessed the most advanced and professional training system in Juxia and claimed it could fully develop his potential. As he considered her words, the protagonist admitted to himself that the offer sounded appealing. However, he also knew that a system that prioritized training above all else was something he had already possessed from the very beginning. Because of that, he chose to refuse. The leader accepted his decision calmly and said she could understand his way of thinking. Instead, she used her authority as captain of Squad 838 to grant him the status of external personnel within White Raven. Under this arrangement, he would occasionally receive commissions when needed and obtain corresponding rewards. This condition felt unexpectedly lenient to the protagonist. He then shifted his focus to the agency itself and wondered whether it possessed any god relics. The leader confirmed that the agency housed a god relic research institute containing many such relics, and that with sufficient merit, obtaining one would not be difficult. After hearing this, the protagonist agreed. He admitted that he had admired White Raven for many years and that becoming external personnel aligned with his long-held goal. The cooperation between both sides was settled. Mandrill felt confused by the decision and questioned whether it was necessary, believing that a martial arts genius, while rare, was not truly uncommon. The leader disagreed, explaining that the protagonist was far from simple. She revealed that she had recently contacted the eldest miss of the Wu family again, and the importance Wu Yuqing placed on Shui Jing was far beyond normal expectations. Mandrill recognized Wu Yuqing as a natural recipient. The leader reminded him that Wu Yuqing had always sought a way to remove that status and believed only a god could oppose another god. Aside from god relics, Shui Jing was the only individual she truly cared about. Because of this, the leader believed he possessed a hidden quality they had yet to uncover, and securing him first was essential. The scene then shifted. While riding in his car, the protagonist reflected on Qingcheng, thinking that even its most prosperous areas could not compare to the North District. Shortly after, he received a message from Wu Yuqing asking him to meet her at the library. He responded that he was on his way and instructed the driver to head toward Qingcheng Library. The scene shifted again. Inside Qingcheng Library on the 7th floor, the protagonist entered and was directed to sit. He picked up a glass of water and drank quietly. With an awkward expression, the protagonist showed his dissatisfaction with the drink. Inwardly, he wondered how much Yuqing actually liked the sweet water kettle. Yuqing explained that the tea was brewed using water produced by his favorite god relic. The protagonist chose a can of Coke instead and opened it. After that, Yuqing brought up the matter of White Raven, assuming they had already contacted him. The protagonist confirmed that he had been invited but had refused. Yuqing agreed with his decision. When the protagonist questioned her reasoning, she explained the symbolism behind the name White Raven. While crows were often seen as ominous beings associated with death, the White Raven symbolized rebirth and mercy. However, this beautiful meaning concealed a harsh reality. The death rate of White Raven's operations was extremely high. Since the organization's establishment over 60 years ago, only 3 people had survived safely until retirement. The protagonist acknowledged the danger. Inwardly, he realized that he would need to be extremely cautious when dealing with White Raven-related work in the future, especially since the resurrection effect of twin life could only be triggered once within a short period. He then asked about the background of the agency. Yuqing explained that its full name was the Abnormal Disaster Emergency Management Special Agency. It was established after the start of the new era to handle various abnormal disasters. The organization operated independently from the 5 great agencies and was therefore referred to as the 6th agency. Its authority was so extensive that even extreme actions within Qingcheng would not result in arrest. The protagonist questioned whether such power worried the government. Yuqing explained that the agency was overseen by 13 high-level officials, most of whom resided in the Azure Court. In that sense, the 6th agency was equivalent to the nation itself. The protagonist realized that the background of the agency was far greater than he had imagined. Yuqing then stated that the main purpose of calling him here was simply to remind him about the White Raven matter, and that he was free to leave. The protagonist asked whether there were any missions or god relics for him to see, but received no such arrangements. When he confirmed there was truly nothing else, Yuqing suggested that he could help by sweeping the library if he had spare time. The protagonist immediately stood up to leave, stating that he still had other matters to attend to. At that moment, he received a call from his teacher. Realizing he had completely forgotten about it, he quickly answered and reassured his teacher that he would arrive soon. The scene then shifted to the South District. The white-haired man from the laboratory was sitting on the stairs of a building. Shortly after, a violet-haired boy appeared and reported that all test subjects had been transferred. The white-haired man remarked that White Raven's ability to track them was sharper than expected and asked about the situation on Kaiping's side. The boy reported that, following instructions, Number 9 had been taken to the Qingyu affiliate and that updates should arrive soon. The white-haired man explained that using Number 9 to draw White Raven's attention was the only way to safely continue transferring the sky-lodging insect mother, as it was otherwise too large a target and easily exposed. The boy complained that Kant Company was providing no real assistance, and that they were forced to rely solely on themselves. Angered, the white-haired man stated that large corporations only wanted to reap benefits without taking risks. If the plan failed, those companies would lose nothing, but that reality was precisely why they had taken on this task themselves. The boy then expressed concern about whether Kant would discard them once everything succeeded. The white-haired man revealed that he had already considered this long ago and had prepared a backup plan. If anything happened to them, Kant would not be able to escape consequences either. The scene shifted to the school playground. A strange man stood quietly, observing the surroundings. As he watched the boys and girls preparing for the sports events, he evaluated them with interest. In his mind, he regarded them as suitable offerings for the insect mother and considered capturing them to gain merit. Above the field, female students were spectating and cheering as they noticed Xuejing. Their excitement quickly drew attention. The strange man followed their gaze and focused on the protagonist. He studied him carefully, surprised that such an ordinary-looking youth could defeat a test subject. Though skeptical, he remained confident that events would soon unfold in his favor. As the strange man left the area, a brown-haired boy noticed him and briefly wondered whether the cleaner was new, as his physical condition seemed unusually good. The race concluded, and Xuejing secured first place. The atmosphere became lively as students reacted enthusiastically. The announcer declared the final rankings, placing Bo Tao second and Xiangyong third. The brown-haired boy approached Xuejing and handed him a water bottle. The protagonist showed no interest in the surrounding attention and instead asked how many events remained. He learned that the 400-meter, 2,000-meter, and relay races were still scheduled. The relay had also been arranged for him by the teacher, as it was another running event. As they spoke, the protagonist suddenly sensed something unusual. A faint sense of discomfort made him turn back instinctively. Activating his eye ability, he scanned the surroundings. What he detected immediately caused concern. He could not believe that such a creature would appear in this location. Inside the academic building, a cockroach-like humanoid monster began attacking people. Panic spread as students fled in fear. Realizing the severity of the danger, the protagonist instructed the brown-haired boy to contact the authorities immediately and report the appearance of a cockroach man inside the school. He then told him to run as far away as possible without looking back. The scene shifted to the entrance of the teaching building. Inside, body parts were scattered across the floor, evidence of the monster's attack. The cockroach man activated a scanning ability and examined a nearby girl, assessing her as fresh prey. The creature moved toward her as she stood frozen in fear. Before it could reach her, the protagonist arrived and positioned himself between the monster and the girl, blocking its advance. The girl felt immediate relief upon seeing Xuejing. Without hesitation, he struck the monster with a powerful blow. The force of the impact sent the creature high into the air before it slammed against a wall behind it. He instructed the girl to leave quickly, and she fled the area in panic. Advancing again, he activated Twin Life and Twin Speed. While moving forward, he focused on weakening the monster first and concentrated his strength into a single point. He then delivered a direct punch to the creature's chest. The impact sent it crashing through multiple walls before it finally fell outside the building. Moments later, a severely injured man covered in blood staggered into the room. He pleaded for help, claiming the situation had spiraled out of control. The protagonist recognized his voice as Duan Kaiping from Golden Wind Dojo and was confused about his presence there. The injured man attempted to ask him to find his master, but before he could finish, the monster reappeared, charging back through the holes in the walls. The protagonist dodged, but the creature redirected its attack toward the injured man. In a single motion, it tore him apart and began consuming the remains. The protagonist realized the monster's speed was overwhelming. Without Twin Life, the earlier exchange might have ended differently. Even his previous decisive strike had failed to kill it. The creature turned toward him again, roaring. The injuries it had sustained began to heal at a visible pace. The recovery speed was far beyond normal expectations. As it attacked again, he evaded swiftly but noticed a shallow cut on his arm. Even while dodging, he had been grazed by a tentacle. This version of the cockroach man was clearly different. Compared to the one he had encountered at Ruizhou Hotel, this one appeared larger and more durable. The barbs on its limbs had grown bigger, and even its antennae had evolved into offensive weapons. It seemed that its genes had been further optimized. The battle was likely to become one of endurance. He took out a CO2 cylinder and presented it as bait. The monster instantly sliced it in half. Gas burst out, and quickly filled the area with thick vapor. Using the smoke as cover, the protagonist launched multiple strikes. He then grabbed a broken iron rod from the debris and seized the opportunity. With a swift motion, he drove the rod into the creature's head and forced it down to its knees. Even in that state, it did not appear completely neutralized. Suddenly, it vanished from sight and began circling him at high speed. He realized it was attempting to confuse him with rapid movement before launching a sneak attack. The fact that it was thinking strategically made the situation more serious. Closing his eyes, he relied on visualization rather than sight. By tracing its movement trajectory mentally, he located it. The sensation reminded him of the moment he had comprehended the cloud-sealing tail. As the monster lunged in, he countered with a decisive strike, executing hidden dragon-style's killing move, turning golden scales. After delivering the blow, he understood that the disturbance at the school was too large to go unnoticed. White Raven would likely respond. For now, the priority was to hold the creature off and buy time until reinforcements arrived. The continuous clash between Xue Jing and the monster causes structural damage throughout the academic building. Quincheng arrives from above using her anti-gravity augment dragon wing device. Observing the extent of the destruction in such a short time, she determines that Xue Jing is still engaged inside. A helicopter approaches the area, but a concentrated air vortex bursts upward through the roof, forcing it to adjust position. Mandrill questions whether they should descend. After scanning the battlefield and confirming Xue Jing's location, Quincheng informs the team that combat data has already been synchronized to their systems. She decides to enter first to secure Xue Jing. The remaining squad members are assigned to capture the sky-lodging insect mother's offspring alive. Quincheng descends into the damaged building. She assesses the residual airflow disturbance and considers that it may have been generated by the cockroach-type monster. Approaching Xue Jing, she places a hand on his shoulder. He reacts instinctively but stops upon recognizing her. His physical condition deteriorates from accumulated injuries and strain, and he collapses. Quincheng stabilizes him and administers a fast-acting painkiller. After taking it, he warns her about the monster's strength. She confirms that the full White Raven squad is present. 2 squad members land near the monster and begin coordinated engagement. Mandrill initiates frontal pressure while receiving tactical reminders from Quincheng regarding the creature's thrust patterns. The monster attempts a direct advance, but is intercepted. A black-haired squad member follows with a precision strike to disrupt its balance. Quincheng gains altitude and demonstrates proper attack positioning. She releases multiple knives from her belt, embedding them precisely into the monster's joint structures. After a brief delay, the knives discharge an electrical current. The concentrated shock fractures the monster's body along its weakened structural points, separating it into multiple segments. She recalls the blades. From his position on the ground, Xue Jing observes that each strike had targeted functional joint weaknesses, minimizing force while maximizing effect. Despite severe structural damage and loss of mass, the monster remains alive. Quincheng instructs Qiyu to prevent further blood loss and maintain the creature's vital condition, as it may provide a lead to the sky-lodging insect mother. She then directs Xiao Jing to prepare the mission report and submit a request to headquarters for a tracking device. Qiyu acknowledges the instruction and begins stabilizing the restrained monster. Mandrill approaches Xue Jing and comments on his condition. Xue Jing responds that their arrival was timely. Mandrill explains that after the captain received the call, they immediately deployed by helicopter from the southern district, noting that the captain places significant importance on him. Xue Jing struggles to stand and asks about the investigation progress in the southern district. Mandrill reports that less than 1/3 of the area has been searched and no findings have been made so far. Xue Jing states that he has obtained a new clue. Quincheng asks him to explain. He describes the situation involving Duan Kaiping, pointing out that as the leader of a delinquent group, his appearance at the school was unusual, especially since he had been posing as a cleaner. Given the circumstances, Xue Jing suspects a deliberate setup. After listening, Quincheng concludes that the information is valuable and instructs Xiao Jing to report it to the higher authorities. As she turns to speak further, she notices the restrained monster beginning to swell rapidly. She immediately orders Xiao Jing and Qiyu to retreat. Xiao Jing reacts in time, but Qiyu is struck during the sudden change. In the next moment, the monster regenerates its body and expands in front of them. Mandrill questions whether it is hyperregeneration. Quincheng clarifies that it is molting. Before they can reposition, the monster launches itself into the air and attempts to escape. Mandrill alerts the captain. Quincheng prepares to pursue. Xuejing steps forward, takes a knife, and asks Quincheng to lend him one. She questions his intention. He activates Twin Life and throws the knife with full force toward the airborne monster. The blade pierces through the monster's chest. The creature loses lift and falls from the sky. Mandrill reacts in surprise at the force of the throw. Xuejing attributes the result to the quality of the captain's weapon. Quincheng remarks on the high cost of the knife. Xuejing reflects that although he had previously used Twin Life against this creature, he had been unable to overcome it without proper equipment. He concludes that weapon quality plays a decisive role. At the same time, he notices strain in his hand and realizes that using that move carries a physical cost. Quincheng places a hand on his shoulder and tells him they will return to the Hidden Dragon Dojo first and discuss the rest later. He agrees. As they proceed toward the helicopter, Xuejing considers that circulating energy alone will not heal his injuries and that he will require assistance from his senior brothers and sisters, likely accompanied by reprimand. The squad boards the helicopter and departs from the school. During the flight, Mandrill reports that they have lost another member and asks whether reinforcements should be requested. Quincheng declines. Mandrill comments that further losses would negatively affect overall statistics and evaluations. Hearing their conversation, Xuejing reflects that he cannot adopt such detachment toward death. He then reviews the internal feedback from the battle. The system records significant growth across multiple attributes as a result of the death-level combat, including improvements in physical conditioning, aiming precision, internal force, and visualization. After processing the information, he feels satisfied despite the physical toll. As the helicopter moves steadily through the air, Xuejing reviews the changes in his abilities. His aiming has improved again. He wonders whether his vision has sharpened along with it. He looks out toward the distant roads and buildings below. Details that should be indistinct at that height now appear unusually clear. Vehicles, intersections, and even small movements on the streets are sharply defined in his sight. He realizes that his visual range has advanced beyond normal human limits. If combined with Hidden Dragon Force, accurately striking a target from a long distance may now be achievable. He considers that against monsters like the cockroach-type creature, maintaining distance would significantly increase his safety. Close combat would no longer be the only option. Quincheng turns to him and informs him that new investigation results have come in from the southern city. Survey instruments have detected that the pollution rate in that area has exceeded 10%. Xuejing asks what pollution rate means. Quincheng explains that it refers to the degree of overlap between their world and the other world. Using a simple comparison, she describes their current reality as one side and the other world as the other. When the two begin to intersect, pollution is generated. Minor overlap results in a low percentage, usually between 1 and 5%, causing only slight disturbances. However, when the overlap becomes more significant, the pollution rate can rise to 10 to 30%. At that level, environmental laws may begin to shift, and entities from the other world can manifest in reality. Xuejing asks whether this is how borderlands are formed. Quincheng clarifies that borderlands occur when the pollution rate reaches 100%. At that stage, the area is neither fully reality nor fully otherworld. It is defined as a subworld. She concludes by warning him that an overlap event could occur in the southern city at any time and advises him not to approach the area casually. He acknowledges the warning. The scene shifts to the Hidden Dragon Dojo. Jia Shanin stands beside Xuejing holding a tube of medicinal ointment. She remarks that he returns injured every time and causes constant concern. She points out that even senior sister Meng is displeased. As she applies the medicine to his bruised arm, she warns him not to repeat such recklessness. Xuejing explains that the situation forced him to fight and that he had no alternative at the time. Unconvinced, she presses harder while applying the ointment, causing him to react to the pain. She tells him he needs to remember it and points out that his entire arm has turned dark with bruising and recovery will take time. He reiterates that during the encounter, he was the only one capable of standing against the monster. Jia Shanin braces his back with her elbow to stabilize him during treatment. He winces again as she increases pressure. She then leans closer and begins channeling qi to guide the medicinal properties into his body, telling him to endure it so the treatment can properly penetrate. As senior sister Meng joins in and applies her own qi with controlled movements, Xuejing notices the difference. Her control is more refined, and the medicinal paste seeps in smoothly without causing additional discomfort. The warmth spreads steadily through his muscles and membranes, easing the strain. While both senior sisters continue the treatment, he senses a subtle change within his body, as if something is responding to the stimulation. At that moment, the dojo master enters and calls out to him. Both senior sisters immediately withdraw, slightly, their expressions turning restrained. Xue Jing straightens despite the lingering soreness and greets his master. The dojo master examines Xue Jing's hand and asks whether he has truly cultivated golden scales. Seeing the extent of the injuries, he remarks that the monster must have been unusually strong to cause this level of damage. Xue Jing then asks about the Golden Wind Dojo. The master recalls that when he was younger, he exchanged pointers with their dojo master, Jiao Hanyuan. At that time, the Golden Wind Dojo promoted a method that trained fists and feet to function like blades, claiming that being unarmed was equivalent to being armed. Curious, he sought them out for a match. Xue Jing is surprised to learn that the master fought more than one opponent. The master explains that after he defeated their leader, the disciples joined in. However, their internal power was insufficient to break his golden scales defense, and he defeated them one by one. Even so, he acknowledges that the Golden Wind Dojo has real substance. If facing them, one must treat an empty-handed opponent as if they are holding a blade. He adds that for Xue Jing's current level, it is not a major concern. Golden Scale's skin of the Hidden Dragon style directly counters the Golden Wind White Rainbow Sword. Opponents at the same level would struggle to penetrate his defense. If the opponent's cultivation greatly exceeds his, then caution alone would not change the outcome. Xue Jing understands. Privately, he recalls that when Lu Huiping enhanced her defense with a relic, Duan Kaiping had been unable to injure her. He wonders what standing Duan Kaiping holds within the Golden Wind Dojo. Jia Shanin tells Xue Jing to turn over so they can treat the front of his body. Senior Sister Meng prepares additional medicine. Xue Jing complies, though somewhat stiffly. The dojo master leaves the room, commenting that healing through exertion consumes considerable stamina. Xue Jing suggests that he could finish applying the medicine himself. Jia Shanin lightly presses a finger to his chest and tells him that what he needs most right now is to relax and let them handle it. Although he claims to have little interest in such matters, he is still at an age where physical reactions are difficult to suppress. He begins circulating the hibernating dragon technique to steady himself. Jia Shanin wonders aloud whether he is feeling shy. As the treatment continues, he focuses on stabilizing his breathing. When a hand moves toward an area that does not require treatment, he instinctively tenses. Senior Sister Meng leans forward to continue applying qi-infused medicine. The close contact causes Xue Jing to flush despite his effort to remain calm. Jia Shanin notices his reaction and calls it out. Senior Sister Meng also realizes the situation and withdraws slightly. Embarrassed, Xue Jing explains that it is an involuntary physical response and apologizes. Jia Shanin states that in this condition, they cannot continue the treatment. Ashamed, Xue Jing turns away and says he will handle the rest himself since the remaining areas are accessible. The two senior sisters leave the room, telling him to finish up on his own. After they depart, he mutters to himself that he cannot tell whether Jia Shanin acted intentionally. 1 hour later, after circulating energy repeatedly, he examines his condition. His skin still feels numb, itchy, and sore. The injuries were heavier than he initially judged. Reflecting on the battle, he realizes the damage stemmed partly from incomplete understanding of turning golden scales. The technique uses gene force to link the skin membranes across the body, distributing and neutralizing incoming force. By spreading impact over a larger surface area, pressure at any single point is reduced. This is the foundation of Golden Scale's skin's defensive strength. He understands now why it counters the Golden Wind White Rainbow Sword. That style relies on blade-like gene concentrated into extremely small contact areas for penetration. When facing a defense that disperses force across the entire body surface, its advantage is diminished. As expected of a core technique of the Hidden Dragon style, none of its methods are simple. The remaining techniques he has yet to fully comprehend include blood training, shaking starfire, and tendon training, eye-piercing current. When he steps out of the dojo, he decides there is no need to rush further cultivation. Recovery must come first. When Xue Jing returns to his apartment and opens the door, he sees Weiner sitting on the sofa watching television. She hears him enter, turns around, and smiles. She asks why he is back so late and whether he brought anything good to eat. He pauses, surprised, and asks how she is able to appear in human form again. As he looks at her, he recalls that according to the library records, transforming into a human required specific conditions that had not yet been fully met. Wainer explains that around noon, she suddenly found she could change back on her own. She adds that she will be leaving soon, so she decided to remain in this form for now. Jing sits beside her and asks why she plans to leave and whether living here has been uncomfortable. She replies that staying by his side brings him danger. She mentions Khan's security company, the Dragon Sect, and possibly other forces he may not even be aware of. Remaining near him only increases the risks he faces. Holding his hand, she says that during the days she stayed with him, she felt genuinely happy. Living as a cat allowed her to be carefree, focusing only on simple things without the burdens of leadership. However, she is the sect leader of the Dragon Sect, and she cannot ignore that responsibility. She concludes that it is time for her to go. Her expression softens, and tears gather in her eyes as she leans closer. Jing holds her firmly and tells her that abandoning her out of fear would make him worthless. He says that no matter what danger comes, they will face it together. She looks at him and asks whether she can truly stay. He confirms that she can. She embraces him tightly. At that moment, his internal system registers a sharp increase in favorability and a significant rise in charm-related experience, pushing the charm technique to a higher level. He notes that the increase is far greater than usual. Typically, such growth is modest. Looking at Wainer holding him closely, he begins to suspect that her emotional state is directly influencing the synchronization process. He tells her that he needs to discuss something important. She looks at him, confused. After he explains his observations about the system feedback and emotional fluctuations, she considers it carefully. She concludes that when her emotions intensify, it likely accelerates the fusion progress with the cat-tail ring, eventually leading to incarnation as Batet. Jing awkwardly explains that it is not just any emotion that advances the fusion, but a specific kind, similar to what she experienced during their first fusion in the bathtub. Wainer immediately blushes in surprise. Her expression shifts to caution as she asks what he intends to do. He clarifies that it is not about what he wants, but whether she is willing. He emphasizes that he is asking if she wants to actively receive and control this power. She moves slightly away on the sofa and asks what he means. He explains that so far, those who incarnated as Batet have not shown abnormalities and have only gained strength. Since they are already making enemies of a large organization like Khan's security, increasing their available strength is a practical consideration. Hearing this, Wainer realizes he is treating the matter seriously rather than impulsively. She asks whether the source of the cat-tail ring is reliable. He answers that he believes the person who provided it had no reason to deceive him. After a brief pause, she suddenly pushes him back onto the sofa and climbs over him, saying that if that is the case, they should try immediately. He asks her to wait, but she clarifies that her decision is based on practical reasoning. More strength means greater security. He tells her there is no need to explain. She then asks how they should proceed. He suggests recreating the conditions from that earlier day. She nods. They enter the bathtub together. Wainer takes his hand and lightly scratches it. The cut opens easily due to her increased strength. Jing endures the sting without reacting outwardly. She leans against his chest, resting her head there, quietly wondering whether anything is happening. At that moment, the relic on her tail begins to glow faintly. Jing observes the change and gently holds the cat-tail ring. As he focuses, he senses a subtle trace of divinity within it. He realizes that deepening the fusion involves extracting the divine power belonging to the foreign god Batet contained inside the relic. If Batet is a deity, then divinity existing within the artifact is logical. Wainer looks up and says she feels slightly stronger. He confirms that he sensed the change as well. With his current physical condition, an ordinary blade might struggle to injure him, yet her casual scratch broke his skin easily. Seeing the wound, she apologizes. He tells her not to worry and asks whether the enhancement is purely physical or if she senses any additional abilities. As the absorption continues at a slow pace, she concentrates and identifies another power. In their terminology, it is called Serpent-Slaying Vanguard. Batet, known as the Wildcat War Goddess, bears the title Serpent Slayer after defeating the Chaos Serpent Apep. Because of this, she possesses a restraining effect against snake-related beings. Jing questions what qualifies as snake-related. Wainer smiles and points out that dragons and snakes share similar traits. By that logic, even techniques associated with dragons could fall within her restraint range. Jing feels puzzled by the situation. The martial art he practices is only called the Hidden Dragon style and does not involve an actual dragon, yet it still seems to fall within the restraint effect connected to Bastet's power. Weiner explains that divine abilities do not operate according to normal logic. According to her understanding, anything associated with the concept or name of a dragon could be affected. After thinking about it, Xuejing wonders if this means Weiner would also have an advantage against the dragon sect. Weiner realizes the implication and becomes excited at the thought that she may no longer need to obey them and could deal with them confidently if they appear again. Seeing her reaction, Xuejing stops her and reminds her not to focus on future conflicts right now. She calms down afterward. Later, while resting, Xuejing remembers the earlier fusion and checks his inventory. He notices that even though he only advanced the fusion of the cattail ring once, he obtained a surprisingly large amount of divine substance, roughly equal to the amount found in a complete divine relic. This makes him question what divine substance actually is. If it is truly the source of a divine relic's power, then relics that have had their divine substance absorbed should lose their abilities. However, the relics he previously absorbed from have shown no visible changes. Unable to determine the reason, he decides not to think about it further and focuses on improving his abilities instead. When reviewing the results of his upgrades, he notices that each level reduces the cooldown period by 10 days. Based on this pattern, he estimates that reaching level 10 could potentially allow an extremely short or even unlimited revival cycle. While looking through the available options, he hesitates over which passive effect he should select. 3 days later, inside the Hidden Dragon Dojo, Xuejing continues practicing his martial arts. He gathers his energy into his fist and releases a punch, sending the force forward with noticeable impact. Reflecting on the results, he recalls that he recently strengthened his physical defense. Although increasing reaction speed would also be useful, the higher limits of the Hidden Dragon style's 5 major techniques depend mostly on the body's endurance. He gathers his strength again and performs another strike. In his understanding, martial arts works similarly to mathematical formulas, where different combinations of movement and force produce specific results. The twin life effect directly adds to the final output, effectively doubling the power. When the punch lands, the impact breaks part of the ground as the force spreads forward. Observing the result, he concludes that rolling wind and thunder already produces powerful impact on its own, and when combined with strengthened physical defense and the twin life effect, the result becomes significantly stronger. At that moment, senior sister Zhu arrives at the training area with a visitor. She informs Xuejing that someone has come to see him. When the visitor steps forward, Xuejing recognizes her as Voidblade, Quincheng. She has come because she needs to discuss something with him. Xuejing becomes confused about why Quincheng came directly to the dojo. Senior sister Zhu asks who the visitor is, but Xuejing apologizes and says he cannot explain her identity. Quincheng grows impatient with the conversation and reminds them that her time is limited. Senior sister Zhu approaches her and insists that if she has something to say, she should speak clearly instead of acting mysterious. Quincheng calmly stops her and explains that the matter can only be discussed with Xuejing. This irritates senior sister Zhu even more. Quincheng then asks Xuejing to leave with her and find a quieter place. Seeing senior sister Zhu's reaction, Xuejing realizes the situation is becoming awkward, but he still follows Quincheng outside. While walking toward the exit, he asks what was so urgent that she had to come all the way to the dojo. Quincheng explains that she is only delivering a message on behalf of someone else. Xuejing quickly guesses that the message comes from Wu Yuqing, and Quincheng confirms it. She activates a projection from her watch and shows him an image. The projection displays Otogi Suzuka, the third heir of the Otogi clan, one of the Far East's 6 major Zaibatsu. The weapon he carries is a divine relic known as 4500 to 519, the Unbreakable Blade, whose ability is called Indestructible. Xuejing shows interest in the concept. Quincheng explains further that among existing divine relics, there is no known shield or counter capable of resisting this blade. In one test, it was exposed to temperatures exceeding 10 million degrees using a special method, yet the blade remained completely unharmed. Xuejing assumes this must be a new containment mission, but Quincheng clarifies that the relic is not out of control and therefore does not require containment. He then asks what Wu Yuqing expects him to do. Quincheng explains that it is not a task being assigned to him, but rather a choice he can make himself. Xuejing understands the implication and realizes Wu Yuqing wants him to obtain the relic. Quincheng explains that Otogi Suzuka has come to Zhuxia to participate in the Under-19 Unlimited Fighting Tournament. Under normal circumstances, targeting someone like him would create a serious diplomatic incident. However, this relic has a special trait that allows it to choose its master. When the current holder loses to someone in combat, ownership of the relic automatically transfers to the victor. Because of this rule, if Xue Jing defeats Otogi Suzuka during the tournament, the unbreakable blade would become his. Meanwhile, at the southern city pier, a ship arrives at the dock. A man on the ship waves toward two people waiting below. They are Jiao Honyuan, the master of the Golden Wind Dojo, and one of his disciples. The disciple reports that their junior brother has been gaining attention in Fengsheng by winning 12 preliminary matches with overwhelming victories. As a result, the reputation of the Golden Wind Dojo has been spreading rapidly. Jiao Honyuan criticizes the situation, saying that winning a few matches has already made him arrogant and lacking in composure. The disciple argues that their junior brother is a prodigy and that some arrogance is understandable. Jiao Honyuan then asks whether the organization known as White Raven is still investigating them. The disciple explains that everyone who knew about the matter has already been silenced, so White Raven cannot obtain any information. However, he expresses regret about the death of their senior brother Kaiping. Jiao Honyuan admits that he also regrets Kaiping's death, but describes it as only a minor setback on their path forward and urges the disciple to focus on the future. The disciple then asks about their junior brother. Jiao Honyuan says that the path the young man must walk is different from theirs. He also warns that their current activities must not be revealed to Cheng Xian, since he is about to participate in the finals and should not be distracted. The disciple bows and acknowledges the order. After arriving in Fengsheng, Xue Jing feels irritated because he had only informed his master about participating in U19 Unlimited Fighting Tournament, yet several others followed him there. His senior sisters insist that it would be dangerous for him to travel alone and claim they came to protect their little junior brother. Xue Jing finds this explanation unreasonable, since they are the ones creating most of the trouble. He then turns to Weiner and questions why she came as well. Weiner explains that since the fusion with Batet can deepen further, she intends to continue working on it persistently. Xue Jing becomes suspicious that she might be getting overly invested in the process, though she denies it. Senior sister Zhu notices the cat staying close to him and remarks that his relationship with it seems unusually close, even bringing it along for the trip. Weiner reacts loudly in protest. Senior sister Zhu suggests leaving the cat at the hotel so it will not interfere with training, which causes both Weiner and Xue Jing to react immediately. Weiner strongly objects, and Xue Jing eventually gives in, allowing everyone to stay together. Later, back at the dojo in Fengsheng, senior sister Zhu begins explaining the situation more seriously. She tells Xue Jing that with his current strength, defeating Otogi Suzuka is unrealistic. Xue Jing asks what level she believes he is at right now. She estimates that he is around level 3. When he asks whether this level system is specific to Fengsheng, she casually reveals that it is simply a system she invented herself. Despite the informal method, she supports her judgment with examples. Otogi Suzuka entered his sect at the age of 10, became the head disciple within 5 years, and 3 years later earned a title within the martial arts world. His strength is considered comparable to their eldest senior brother. She then asks whether Xue Jing believes he could defeat their eldest senior brother at his current stage. After thinking about it, Xue Jing admits to himself that there is still a considerable gap between them, and if they fought now, he would most likely be defeated. Senior sister Zhu notes that at least he understands his own limits. However, she explains that her main concern is not just the difference in strength. The U19 Unlimited Fighting Tournament is the only global fighting competition where weapons are permitted. Because of this rule, the weapon used by a contestant can heavily influence the outcome of a match. At the same time, a fighter's effectiveness in battle is closely tied to their familiarity and skill with their chosen weapon. Senior sister Zhu points toward the weapons in the room and asks Xue Jing which one he would choose if he had to pick a suitable weapon. Xue Jing replies that he would not choose any of them because he prefers relying on his fists. Senior sister Zhu then explains that if Otogi Suzuka fights with a weapon, his strength could be considered equivalent to 9 of their eldest senior brothers combined. Hearing this comparison surprises Xue Jing. She writes something on the board, indicating the use of the Joshi sword. After seeing it, Xue Jing reflects on the strength of their eldest senior brother. Although he has never fought him directly, he knows that the eldest senior brother has already mastered all the killing moves of the Hidden Dragon style. Even if Xue Jing were to push the turning golden scales technique to its limits, it would still be difficult to withstand a full power strike from him. If several opponents of that level attacked at the same time, the result would almost certainly be defeat. At that moment, senior sister Zhu brings out a weapon covered with cloth and presents it to him. When Xue Jing touches it, he immediately senses its quality and recognizes it as a blade. Senior sister Zhu becomes curious about how he realized it so quickly. Xue Jing explains that he cannot clearly describe the feeling, but it seems as if the weapon itself is calling out to be used by him. Senior sister Zhu is satisfied with his reaction and explains that she has not given him anything since he joined the sect, so she decided to present this blade as a gift for him to use in the U19 tournament. Xue Jing asks about its approximate value. She explains that the blade is forged mainly from dragon bone steel and also contains materials such as star iron stone, moonlight thread, and blood amber. The weapon was crafted by the renowned smith Hijiyoshi. Altogether, its cost is around 20 million. The price shocks Xue Jing because it is far beyond his own financial means. Nevertheless, he thanks senior sister Zhu and accepts the weapon. As he swings the blade to test it, he feels that handling a weapon is still somewhat unfamiliar. He briefly wonders if mastering it could be as simple as using equipment in a game, where the user instantly knows how to operate it. At that moment, the dojo master suddenly appears and throws water toward him. Xue Jing reacts instinctively, sensing the movement and dodging while holding the blade. The master comments that his earlier posture looked unrefined. Xue Jing greets him and asks whether the hidden dragon style contains specific techniques for weapon usage. The master explains that advanced martial arts are interconnected. Movements that can be performed with fists and feet can also be adapted for use with weapons. As he speaks, he pours the remaining tea water onto the ground, and the liquid penetrates the surface, leaving small holes. Xue Jing notices this and realizes how much control the master possesses. The master then states that the competition is approaching and that Xue Jing should learn a decisive technique. He demonstrates a killing move within a mental training space, allowing Xue Jing to witness the power of a single strike directly. The overwhelming force of the move shocks him. After the demonstration, the master asks how it felt. Still surprised by what he experienced, Xue Jing recognizes the nature of the technique and realizes it is the concept of killing intent. The dojo master explains that the technique known as Asura Blade Intent is created by pushing the chi of motion to its extreme. At that level, the user can influence others purely through spiritual consciousness, even without direct physical contact. Xue Jing finds the idea difficult to relate to ordinary scientific logic. The master responds by pointing out that the hidden dragon style itself already involves phenomena that cannot easily be explained scientifically, such as manifesting dragon-like power during techniques. Because Xue Jing wants to learn weapon usage, the master decides to teach him Asura Blade Intent. He explains that even without perfect body coordination or specialized killing moves, simply swinging a blade with this intent would already produce considerable power. Training begins immediately. Xue Jing hesitates, thinking that sparring directly with the master would be excessive. The master clarifies that the one assisting with the training will be Qing Jiaoming instead. Xue Jing is instructed not to worry about refined techniques for now and to attack with full determination. Xue Jing moves forward and launches his first strike with a blade. Senior sister Meng avoids the attack easily, moves behind him, and counterattacks before telling him to continue. He attacks again, and she dodges once more while maintaining the training rhythm. While observing the exchange, the master realizes that Xue Jing shows natural aptitude with weapons as well. Based on his progress, he estimates that it may take about a week for him to become comfortable with the technique, possibly even as little as 4 days. At that moment, a student rushes into the dojo and reports that someone claiming to be from the Golden Wind Dojo has forced their way inside and appears to be looking for trouble. Shortly after, the young man who had arrived earlier by ship enters the dojo. He pushes past the student and directly challenges Xue Jing, declaring that he wants to fight to the death. Xue Jing does not recognize him and asks who he is. The visitor introduces himself as Li Chengxian, a direct disciple of the Golden Wind Dojo. He states that if he wins the fight, Xue Jing must answer a question for him. Hearing the name, Xue Jing remembers seeing it on the participant list previously provided by Wu Yuqing and realizes that Li Chengxian is connected to the Golden Wind Dojo, which is related to the earlier incidents involving the cockroach-like creatures. The dojo master then tells Xue Jing to step forward and exchange a few moves with the challenger. Xue Jing hesitates when his master asks him to spar, but the master reassures him that the dojo is his territory and there is no need to worry. After hearing this, Xue Jing bows and agrees to the exchange. Nearby, One of Li Qingshuan's companions observes Xue Jing and realizes that he is the same youth responsible for defeating individuals known as Number 1 and Number 9. He quietly warns Li Chengxian that the opponent is strong and should not be underestimated. Li Chengxian, however, moves forward confidently, saying he has seen many fighters who appear impressive but lack real strength. When he addresses Xue Jing as a child, Xue Jing reacts to the remark. Li Chengxian then states that he is actually 1 year older and jokingly suggests that Xue Jing could call him brother. He continues speaking in a mocking tone, saying he will hold back since they are inside Xue Jing's own dojo and it would not be good to embarrass him too badly. Xue Jing responds by placing his blade aside and remarking that Li Chengxian talks too much. Immediately afterward, he moves forward with sudden speed, disappearing from his original position. Li Chengxian is momentarily surprised by the sudden movement. Xue Jing appears behind him, catching him off guard. However, Li Chengxian reacts quickly and moves to counterattack. Both of them strike at the same time, their punches colliding directly. The force of the impact pushes both fighters backward. Li Chengxian steadies himself and acknowledges that Xue Jing is stronger than he expected. While observing the exchange, Xue Jing recognizes the strength of the Golden Wind White Rainbow sword style and understands why it carries such a reputation. Li Chengxian gathers his energy again while advancing. He realizes that this is the first time he has fought a true martial artist in direct combat. Most of his previous opponents have been cyborgs or the strange cockroach-like monsters, so facing a proper martial artist feels different. He launches another powerful strike towards Xue Jing. Xue Jing blocks the blow with his wrist. The impact is strong, but it fails to cause significant damage. Seeing this, Li Chengxian becomes shocked and realizes that Xue Jing has cultivated golden scale skin, something extremely difficult for someone so young. Xue Jing responds with a powerful punch and begins delivering a continuous series of strikes. Senior Sister Zhu watches the fight and becomes surprised by how much Xue Jing has improved. While attacking, Xue Jing notices that Li Qingshuan's body is unusually resilient. Even after taking numerous punches, he remains steady, almost like steel. Xue Jing wonders whether cultivating the Golden Wind White Rainbow sword technique also strengthens the user's physical body, since most people would have already collapsed after just a few hits. As the fight continues, Xue Jing finally notices a brief opening and gathers his energy into his fist, preparing to deliver a decisive strike. Before the attack can land, a voice suddenly orders them to stop. Xue Jing immediately pulls back and flips away. At that moment, Jiao Honyuan, the master of the Golden Wind Dojo, appears. He addresses Xue Jing calmly, reminding him that this is only a match and that there is no need to push it to a lethal conclusion. Xue Jing responds bluntly, questioning whether everyone from the Golden Wind Dojo is unreasonable. He points out the contradiction in their behavior. First, someone barges in demanding a duel to the death, and then another person suddenly calls it a simple spar and asks him not to go for the kill. He sarcastically suggests that they should go back, decide on a consistent story, and then return. Jiao Honyuan becomes visibly angered by the remark. At that moment, Xue Jing's master bursts into laughter, praising his disciple while also pointing out the same contradiction. He remarks that the Golden Wind Dojo came looking for trouble first, yet they are now the ones asking for restraint, which does not make much sense. Jiao Honyuan glances angrily toward his own student before calming himself and turning back toward Xue Jing's master. He proposes that since Xue Jing will also be participating in the U19 No Rules fighting tournament, he might as well give him a few rounds of practice. Senior Sister Zhu immediately becomes furious at the suggestion, accusing him of already being rude by coming uninvited and now still wanting to fight her junior brother. Xue Jing's master then asks Xue Jing directly what he thinks about the proposal. Xue Jing considers the situation carefully. Sparring with someone like Jiao Honyuan could help him understand the true essence of the Golden Wind White Rainbow blade technique. At the same time, he suspects that the man might have other motives behind the offer. Sensing his hesitation, his master reassures him once again that everything is happening within their own dojo and there is nothing to worry about. Realizing that his master and the others are present, Xue Jing understands that the situation is under control. With that in mind, he raises his sword and agrees to the exchange. He immediately moves forward and launches a powerful strike. Jiao Honyuan avoids the attack effortlessly while observing him closely, thinking that the boy is still very young. Spotting an opportunity, Jiao Honyuan attempts to strike back. Xue Jing quickly evades the attack and counters in return. While Jiao Honyuan tries to dodge, the blade still manages to graze his nose slightly. Surprised by the result, Jiao Honyuan realizes that the young fighter possesses remarkable talent with weapons. At the same time, a darker thought forms in his mind. He begins considering a way to capture the boy and feed him to the broodmother. The fight continues as Xue Jing attacks again, and Jiao Honyuan avoids the strike. During the exchange, a notification suddenly appears before Xue Jing. New skill unlocked. Seeing the notification, Xue Jing finds the result unusual and thinks that only a true expert would gain progress like this, unlocking a new skill after just a single exchange. With renewed enthusiasm, he calls out to Jiao Honyuan and urges him to continue the match. Jiao Honyuan covers his nose and refuses to continue the fight, saying he still has to take his useless disciple back to recover. Xue Jing then turns to Li Chengxian and tells him that they will meet again in the tournament and that he should not underestimate him at that time. Li Chengxian responds irritably and decides to leave. After they depart, senior sister Zhu comments that Xue Jing was too generous for giving Li Chengxian a graceful way to withdraw. Xue Jing calmly explains that he was only stating facts. At that moment, Li Chengxian had not yet fully raised his qi. Although it looked like he blocked the strike, he had actually taken heavy damage and could only focus on defense afterward. According to Xue Jing's judgment, Li Qingshuan's real strength is greater than what was shown in that brief clash. The dojo master then asks Qingjiao to hand him a blade. While looking at Xue Jing, he quietly observes that his disciple's perception and eyesight have been improving rapidly. After receiving the blade, the master holds the sword. Xue Jing senses something and decides to push himself further. If he wants to comprehend the asura blade intent, he must face it with the resolve to die. With that determination, he leaps into the air and swings his blade powerfully toward the master. The master blocks the strike with his own sword, and the two remain locked in that position. 3 minutes pass. Senior sister Zhu becomes confused and asks what the master and junior brother are doing. At that moment, Qin Yuglin suddenly appears and explains that the two of them are fighting within the mental world. Senior sister Zhu is surprised, wondering where he suddenly appeared from. Inside the mental world, Xue Jing and the master continuously exchange strikes. During the intense mental battle, Xue Jing realizes that the only way to resist killing intent is with an even stronger and purer killing intent. When a person swings a blade with the resolve to kill the opponent, the attack naturally becomes direct and unstoppable. Through this realization, he begins to grasp the essence of the asura blade intent. Watching the process, Chun Yuglin remarks that the junior brother has already learned it and expresses excitement about seeing how far a genius like him can go. Soon after, a notification appears before Xue Jing showing the results of the training. Your points risen in the aspects of Weapon EXP Visualization, EXP Fitness EXP, Hidden Dragon Force Visualization, and have unlocked Asura Blade. Intent scene then shifts to the Golden Wind Dojo. Jiao Honyuan scolds Li Chengxian, asking why he had to cause trouble right before the tournament. He explains that even he must show respect to the dragon lore of that dojo, yet Li Chengxian still dared to challenge them. Li Chengxian, now emotional, explains that he already knows about senior brother Kaiping's death. Kaiping had always treated him well, and the sudden death left him unable to simply ignore the matter. Since Kaiping died at Xue Jing's school, he wants to know what truly happened and wishes to ask Xue Jing directly. Jiao Honyuan sighs and tries to calm him. He tells Li Chengxian that if he wins the championship at the 19 No Rules fighting tournament, he will reveal the entire truth to him without hiding anything. After hearing that condition, Li Chengxian agrees. The scene shifts to a forest where Xue Jing walks forward alone. After stopping for a moment, images of his potential opponents appear in his mind as he prepares himself mentally. Soon after, he begins swinging his blade repeatedly, practicing his technique with powerful and focused movements. After a period of training, a notification appears before him. Receiving the notification, Xue Jing realizes that he gained a large amount of experience even without participating in a real battle. He reflects on how powerful moments of enlightenment can be. If such insights happened every day, there would be no need to constantly search for fights. He could simply isolate himself, train for several years, and eventually emerge invincible. However, he also recognizes the danger behind the Asura Blade intent. The concept represents an Asura who governs slaughter, someone who possesses the right to kill everything but has no freedom not to kill. Xue Jing does not want to reach a point where he might eventually turn his blade toward the people he cares about. Because of that, He considers using visualization in the future to reshape or remodel the Asura blade intent into something more controlled. While he is thinking about this, his phone suddenly begins ringing. Seeing the call so early surprises him, and he wonders who could be contacting him. He answers the phone, and after listening to the other side, he becomes confused when he hears something about a contract. The scene then shifts outside the tournament building. When Xue Jing arrives, a professional agent named Jiang Siwei is waiting for him. She introduces herself and explains that from this moment onward, she will be responsible for handling all matters and arrangements related to his participation in the U19 tournament. As they walk inside the building together, she tells him that she will first take him to complete the registration process. While entering, Xue Jing notices a wall filled with photographs and asks what they represent. Jiang Siwei explains that the pictures show the champions of previous U19 fighting tournaments. While observing the wall, Xue Jing suddenly stops when his eyes fall on one particular photograph. Looking at it carefully, he realizes that it is Oto Jibara Suzuka. Curious, he asks Jiang Siwei how much she knows about him. She explains that Oto Jibara Suzuka was last year's champion, and because of that victory, he has already been seeded directly into the finals of this year's tournament. She also shows Xue Jing another poster of him, and adds that he is the third heir of the Oto Jibara conglomerate, as well as the orthodox successor of the Soberyu martial style. Xue Jing becomes curious and asks about Soberyu. Jiang Siwei explains that the style traces its origin to the Eastern war god, Sakanu no Tamuramuro. The Oto Jibara family are said to be his descendants. Taking the name from Tamuramuro's sword, Sobamaru, the martial art known as Soberyu was established. The style is famous for its incredible speed, and at its peak it is said that a practitioner can deliver 1,000 slashes in a single second. Hearing this, Xue Jing feels both confused and shocked. The idea of performing 1,000 cuts in 1 second sounds almost impossible. As he thinks about it, memories of his own training flash through his mind. He then considers that with his dynamic vision and the speed granted by twin lives, there might be a chance for him to keep up with that kind of tempo. Jiang Siwei watches Xue Jing quietly and begins thinking to herself. Seeing his focused expression while staring at Oto Jibara Suzuka's picture, she assumes that he is already imagining how he might defeat such a famous prodigy. The thought makes her sigh. To her, a young fighter, setting his sights on someone like Oto Jibara Suzuka feels both sad and inspiring. She then encourages him, telling him that although Oto Jibara Suzuka is a prodigy, if he trains hard he might one day become someone just like him. Xue Jing thanks her politely, but inwardly he realizes that she has misunderstood what he was thinking. Soon they arrive near the registration desk. Jiang Siwei explains that because Xue Jing joined the tournament through a special channel, signing the contract will immediately make him an official contestant. Official participants receive a monthly salary of 180,000 Juxia along with employee benefits. The contract for the U19 No Rules fighting tournament lasts for 1 year. During the tournament period, contestants are treated as employees of the U19 organization and receive the corresponding benefits. Any prize money earned during matches belongs entirely to the contestant, while taxes are handled by the company. While signing the contract, Xue Jing reflects on how surprising it is that contestants are paid simply for participating in matches, concluding that the organizers are quite generous. Afterward, Jiang Siwei reminds him that the rules of the U19 tournament differ slightly from most other fighting competitions and that it would be better for him to understand them in advance. When Xue Jing asks what makes the rules different, she explains that if a contestant faces an opponent so strong that victory seems impossible, they are allowed to forfeit the match. However, forfeiting does not immediately eliminate them from the tournament. Instead, they are sent to a revival round. As long as they survive in the revival zone until the end, they can still obtain the qualification to challenge the champion. Hearing this, Xue Jing briefly considers a strategy. If someone chose to forfeit from the beginning, they might theoretically reach the finals without taking unnecessary risks. However, he quickly dismisses the thought, realizing that if others adopted the same plan, they would inevitably encounter each other earlier in the revival stage. While watching him, Jiang Siwei begins thinking about something else entirely. She notes his handsome appearance and secretly decides that she will train and promote him into the greatest dark horse contestant in the tournament's history. Xue Jing then suggests that they end their tasks for the day. Jiang Siwei agrees and tells him that if he has any questions, he can contact her at any time. Later, the scene shifts to a beach area. While walking along the shore, Xue Jing continues thinking about Oto Jibara Suzuka. From what he has learned, the opponent is even stronger than he initially expected. Not only is his speed extraordinary, but his weapon techniques are also top tier. If Xue Jing wants to defeat him, he knows he will need much more training. While he is thinking, nearby voices draw his attention. A boy approaches a girl who is resting on the beach and begins trying to flirt with her, boasting that he and his friends are dark horse candidates in the U19 tournament. Another companion joins in, telling the girl that if she stays with them, she will be able to buy anything she wants in the future. The first boy then continues with a lewd tone, claiming that once they win the championship, she will become the champion's wife and the next big star of Maple City. Watching the scene, Xue Jing silently judges the behavior of those contestants and concludes that this must be the general quality of the average participants. It makes him understand why Wu Yuqing did not want him to participate in the preliminary rounds. However, when he looks more closely at the girl they are bothering, he suddenly realizes something. The woman looks familiar, and the recognition leaves him momentarily shocked.